Episode 3 is called Rhaenyra Triumphant, but air quotes should be included, and the music tells an entirely different story than that title suggests. The episode itself tells an entirely different story in many ways, because a lot of that doesn't look like victory. It looks like disaster on the horizon, but in many ways it looks exactly what victory looks like. The ugly sides of winning that we don't often see, because the show or movie or book ends with the defeat of the enemies, not with the rebuilding of the realm. There's a happily ever after in place of what this stuff is. Well, this is not very happy, but there's an ever after, we'll say. And this is that ever after played out in great detail. Great detail. It's the show's version of a POV chapter. This is their shot at what Aragorn's tax policy would look like, so to speak. It's a clever idea for a concept, and I think it was used at about the best time they could have chosen it in terms of where the narrative is and the combination of Fire and Blood and the changes that they've made to it, those things intersecting. This is the right time for it. Feels good. Despite the singular location, this episode did a lot with regards to setting up not just the rest of the season, but the rest of the show. The reality of Triumph is a mountain of issues, some of which are surprising, others of which Rhaenyra handles surprisingly. There will be conflict either way. War turns to intrigue, right back to war all again in one episode, as Alicent tells Rhaenyra to kill the boy figuratively, and Daemon tells her to kill the boy literally. All that and more on this review of episode 3 of season 3 on History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome back, everybody. I'm Aziz. With me, as always, is Sean and Ashea when we talk TV shows. It's 6 o'clock on Monday in Eastern Time Zone. That is when we go live. You can always catch us afterwards on any podcast platform, and we do appreciate you checking us out. We also do preview streams on 5 o'clock Fridays at the also Eastern Time Zone. We don't change time zones for those somehow. It's amazing. Sean, how's it going, man? I know we both predicted that you would like this episode a lot. We got people in the chat predicting that you would like this episode a lot. I think the chat knows you well because you're smiling. I think that's the smile of agreement, isn't it?
I did love it. That last episode had some more action scenes in this one, which, it's not like I just don't like action, but it's not what I really care about. And it, use those to raise the moments of like Rhaenyra approaching the throne. That scene was so good. But I still think overall I like this one more. That last one was really good. I think I like this one even more. I'm so impressed. And I even, predicted, worried, whatever, that there'd be less action and some people might be let down. You're like, don't worry about that. And I'm sure there will be more action. But this episode was what I really want. Drama.
Heck yeah, man. I'm glad. I'm excited to hear your takes on quite a number of things. There's also a lot of things filled in here that aren't in the book. Some just kind of a natural extension of changes they've already made. Some just, this part of the book doesn't have a lot of detail. So they added stuff, and, that's going to be a lot of fun for us to chat about. So the excitement there in part is also that some of this is new to us as well. We weren't expecting some of these things. So we're getting to experience the newness as if we were relatively unsullied like you are in terms of Fire and Blood content.
If I could interject, I was thinking through this episode, I was like, I bet this wasn't in the book. I bet this, minutia of the first days and her trying to manage things, doesn't seem like the type of thing. Like, if I understand correctly in the book, some of these battles are just like a paragraph.
Yeah.
So, maybe George spent a bunch of time getting into the minutia of Rhaenyra's reign, but most likely this was a sentence at best in the book. And this type of insight, who would have been there to witness these things and record them. And if the show's going to take liberty, man, this is the way to do it. And
yeah,
another quick follow-up, I want to say, I love the drama of it, but also all the filmmaking aspects. The music was particularly good in this episode. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about that and some other stuff.
You're right about that. Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about all those things. Let's get to it. If you have questions for us, you can certainly hit us up live during the stream here, or just get us at westeroshistory@gmail.com or on any social media platform. We're pretty much anywhere. You can tell us what you liked most or didn't like, or ask us questions about mysteries or decisions or what we think about anything in general. I would like to start us off with a trivia question. This one is one that Ashea noticed right before the episode. I couldn't think of anything, and Ashea picked me up here right at the end with a good one. There's only one other episode in all of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms to use a character's first name in the title. Who is the character and the episode title? Answer is at the end. So there were some changes to the opening crawl, as we expected. In our preview episode, we sometimes like to predict or at least chat about what might change in the opening crawl. With a large battle, it's often easy enough to say, well, there'll be some scene or two from that battle, but, it's fun to try to guess specifically. In this case, we guessed things like Vhagar attacking Harrenhal, or Otto's head, or something like that. Instead, we got one that was fairly predicted, but there's no throne pictured. I thought it was a little surprising. Instead of the throne, there's Syrax. We thought it would be Rhaenyra at the throne, but it says with her dragon. She has Mysaria to her right, our left, and Daemon on the reverse. Now, it looks kind of like her hands. Does that look like darkness on her fingers there? Maybe that's supposed to be blood, but there's red elsewhere, and it's not red, so I'm not sure. It's a little confusing to me, but
I think it's not red on her hand specifically, but there is a red bleeding effect that happens right there in the center.
Okay.
But not specifically to her hand.
Yeah, there's definitely blood like on Syrax's flank there, I guess that is. Anyway, it's with the open palms are a gesture of open-handedness, and that's supposed to be, basically what we're seeing, especially towards the common folk. Now we zoom in farther, and there's more people. Next to Daemon, we have Corlys, and we have Alicent and Helena, it looks like. And there's a rat at the foot of the Iron Throne, a scene that we actually see play out this episode. And that's probably a top theme of the episode, too, is rats. All sorts of different meanings behind that. And then there's a bunch of people prostrate, and there's some blood. And it looks like they're prostrate in front of the throne. It's a bit ominous because of the blood. And then the fabric tears, which I think is a straightforward representation of the divide in the realm. And that's obviously a clear sign that they're starting off thinking they've won. The episode opening crawls already told you that, this isn't over. I don't know that too many people were fooled by that, though. Only characters in the story are fooled by that. So yeah, this was the so-called experimental episode. And like Sean, I was very pleased with it. It is put us in an unusual place to consider the show version of something more detailed than the book version. I mean, that's not the case very often at all. Now, it is a big change of scale. As Sean said, shrinking from the scale of large battles in lots of locations to this. George does that a lot. That's something that the POV structure allows you to do. So that's cool that this not only accomplishes that, but it does it by making a so-called POV chapter episode. Now, I keep harping on how TV should focus on its strengths. This is a good example of that. The music did a ton of work this episode, and they focused on what the vast majority of us consider the strongest performer too. And there's also great performances from other characters as well. So just strong all around. So the variety is good. This was different. I don't know if this would be a great thing to do for a bunch of episodes. I don't know how they could fit it into a bunch of episodes, but as far as choosing to do it once, this seems like the perfect time to do it. Just like last week, in some ways, it was kind of hard to vote for other characters in terms of favorite performance, but we know how to highlight other performances. Can you believe Emma Darcy's only been in 15 episodes? That's kind of wild, right? Because there's only 4 in season 1 that she was in, or they were in, because the first 5 were Billy Alcock, and then there was the episode, the Green Council episode, where none of the characters on the black side were in, which was, of course, followed by episode 10, which was the reverse. So last week, Emma took 62% of the votes. That's about as high as it ever gets. Matt Smith got 17%. Fia Saban playing Helena got 3%. Alan Abu Bakar Salim was the only character who got above 1% in the poll. And you can vote for multiple people in our Facebook polls. This is where this is coming from. So that tells you something. It was people really just picked those few. And it's hard to argue. So, Sean, what do you think? Who was your pick here? It's like, yeah, well, Rhaenyra and, say what you want to say. Pick who you want to pick and say what you want to say about Emma Darcy.
Not only is Emma Darcy a great performer, but this episode is focused on her. I'm pretty sure, I'm going to go on a slight tangent here. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure she was in every scene. I think that was the whole point of this. I realized, though, she wasn't in that opening scene. And that was a little bit out of the ordinary to have that cold open, right? And that's because it wasn't her POV. I think that was intentionally kind of set aside so they could continue the rest of it in this style. But so, getting past that, I'll say Alicent. I thought that she was about as featured as anyone else here. And again, I don't want to take away from performers who have these moments of, rage or grief or whatever, but Alicent does really good with these moments of subtlety and nuance. And again, other people do too. But if I have to pick someone, I think, I almost said Alicent Cook, Olivia Cook, I think is hitting what I want to hit. It's like the nuance and the facial expressions and the kind of the restraint passion, because clearly she has rage and grief and these other things, but she's got to keep it at bay and keep her face on. And it's a tough spot to be in for a person and a tough role for an actor to portray.
Completely agree with you, especially about the facial expressions. She's so strong, her facial expressions, especially the final scene with Daeron. Shea, what would you pick? Maybe you have a specific moment you want to highlight about Rhaenyra, or you just want to talk about somebody else. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, obviously, who wouldn't say Rhaenyra featured the whole time? I'm gonna say someone else. I'm gonna say Corlys, say Steve, because I really felt his resentment and rage, and I thought it was a good performance by him. I was like kind of egging him on, like cheering him on when he was talking to her in this scene, starting to yell at her in public, because I mean, she is being a big old hypocrite, and he was incredibly gracious with her, astoundingly so with her, frankly. So yeah, I thought he really captured that. I liked that a lot. For humor, as always, Ulf is the funniest.
The way he was avoiding the sword. Yeah. So, in that case, he had a point. We'll talk about it later. Yeah, I agree with these picks a lot. I had Corlys very highly rated myself, and I marked down Alicent in case no one else did. I really also want to shout out fake Daeron. He obviously didn't have many lines, but it's harder, I think, when you're that age and, you're not allowed, you don't have lines. In some ways that makes it harder. He did a lot. The way his eye fluttered when he was called out at the end there, and that's just really good. I'd give that kid some praise. I really appreciated Daemon the Conqueror's speech there. That was fun. It gets us into some obscure world building, and I really liked the way he went back and forth between English Common and Valyrian. But even in that scene, Emma Darcy was just unbelievable. The way they roll their R's when speaking High Valyrian is just like, this is what I imagine like the poetry of High Valyrian sounds like when in Valyria back in the day, like the champion of poetry reading at the court of one of the 40 families of Dragon. That's what they sound like. So yeah. So you're right, Sean. It was every scene with Rhaenyra except the cold open, and then they put the intro between it. So that was a clever way to separate that like a chapter, like an epilogue, or rather a prologue. So let's go. Let's talk about that first scene, since it was first, and it obviously sets up something that plays out throughout the whole episode and resolves at the end. It's the intimidatingly large host, but even more intimidating large dragons. I like to joke when we saw the scene in the original review. I was like, oh, Daemon's going to take all these guys on by himself. When you just see that shot of him standing there alone. But no, he's got dragons with him. I really appreciated something as a person who loves cats, that Tessarien's tail, when they're just sitting there, his tail was like thumping, kind of like just the way a cat would, who's kind of sitting still, a little bit restless. And I was like, oh, that's whoever did the art design for Tessarien is a cat owner. Whatever ends up being it's a false surrender and a false hostage. It's funny here, the duplicitousness on both sides. Am I to trust in the reliability and rectitude of the rogue prince? Ormond says. Well, he was lying. He's like, I will take him as a hostage. Then he's like, let's kill this kid. And Ormond was lying too. He obviously didn't even hand over the real kid. So they both just, and Daemon didn't anticipate being tricked, but Ormond certainly did anticipate several things.
Does Ormond just not have honor, or did he, have his fingers crossed? Or like he kneeled and swore to Rhaenyra. He just does not care about the value of his oath.
I think there's something to that, and I agree. That's a sticking point. Like they even showed John Roxton kind of look at him when he knelt. It wasn't just a nothing, and I think maybe that Dragon Keeper at the end was part of the reason why he maybe turned, was because he saw this oath get broken, besides the danger to people. But anyway, yes, I think that was relevant. What do you think, Sean?
I do think it's relevant, but I also think it's an interesting, debatable point. Like, he's making the oath under certain assumptions, including you're not going to harm this boy, right? And that you have the throne. Aegon is dead. Daemon came up and made all these announcements. And he's like, all right, well, if all that's true, then fine, I'll kneel. But all that wasn't true. So it's there are many things I feel, whatever you want to say about honor or the law of the land of Westeros at the time, they can make an oath null and void. He's at least got an out there to justify himself.
Let me throw one little detail in there. Let's not forget that he knelt and then was like, oh yeah, I forgot. You got to hand over Daeron. It was after he knelt that he made that condition. So you're right. There was like a little bit of an order to things that, and there's a lot of witnesses who are going to back his version of events, I suppose. Whereas there's only Ulf and Hugh and Adam to back Daemon's version of events, I suppose. Anyway, yeah.
I do also want to say it's also worth noting that, let's say he's dishonorable, right? And it was a valid oath, and he either knew at the moment he wasn't going to follow through or became a traitor afterward. All right, but he did that in order to save thousands, tens of thousands of lives. All right, I'd sacrifice my honor too. Like, that's almost more honorable, right? Like, and that's also been a theme that George has explored many times. So, you may question his honor legitimately, but it doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. Now, I don't know him well enough. I don't necessarily want to advocate that he's a good person.
Yeah.
Yet to be seen.
Given what he did at the end and put his people in the way of all the population in order to do, it's basically the same strategy of the Gullet. Like, keep the people close to the innocents, and then you can't just rain fire down on the city without killing a lot of innocents.
Shield.
Yeah, human shield strategy. That's exactly what it is. So he doesn't seem like a very good guy in that sense. But yeah, we'll see. Obviously, knowing that Daemon is going to try to trick him is not a sign of being a bad guy either. And like you said, there's already a lot of people that bent the knee in season 1 or what have you that changed sides. It's not that unusual, certainly, but it is dishonorable for sure.
I also want to point out another thing this thing gets across is that he even said something to the effect of, the patient predator gets his prey or something like that. He's clearly patient and we'll say clever. He didn't just now decide, get some random kid and pretend it's Daeron. Like, he's thought this out. He knew it was coming, and he knew how he was going to deal with it, and he knows the next step. Not to say he isn't arrogant, but Daemon's arrogance is getting in his way, right? Daemon's like, I'm here, I'm in charge, give me your stuff. Like, okay, hey, give me your stuff. See how good I am? Like, he's not stopping to think forward. He's not plotting things out or putting himself in other people's shoes, etc. Ormond is.
Well, here's my thought. One, Ormond is competent in many ways, so of course you're advocating slightly for him. But also, he's a very competent hairstylist. He got bleach and toner and made that look very convincing and realistic.
Yeah, that was a realistic Targaryen hairstyle.
I like people joking about Rhaenyra looking closely at it, like, damn, I could have done this for my kids. If only I'd realized that I could get a hairstylist on staff. But also, my bigger question here is, how does Daemon just decide, like, okay, goodbye to your dragon? That's my sticking point about Daemon not thinking things through.
Well, I think it's just that I don't have a big problem with that. I thought it through and was like, yeah, I mean, maybe if they were just really being super cautious, or they would claim the dragon too, but they don't see it as a risk at all because they don't suspect duplicitousness, and they didn't see this particular trick coming at all. They just don't imagine Targaryen could possibly be a threat if he doesn't have a rider, and they don't see any way for them to get a new rider. It's not like they could do their own red sewing. There aren't Targaryen bastards in Old Town like there are in King's Landing and Dragonstone, so it's a really unique situation they were able to pull. It just, I don't know. It's also a small dragon. I think if they were being cautious, they would do it, but I think it's believable It's certainly Daemon's arrogance is extreme in this episode. He thinks the war's over. He's not only counting his chickens before they're hatched. He's counting chickens in Essos. He's like already thinking. He's probably like already thinking about that. He was like on the way to accept the surrender of Ormond. He's like, Tyrosh, Pentos, all that. Yeah. So
I was already. We talked a little in the first episode about that character that, in certain ways, seemed obviously to be Daeron. Well, but in certain ways they weren't clarifying it. I thought he might be a decoy, or maybe someone else is a decoy. I was really suspicious here when they didn't take the dragon. It stirred me to think it through, though. I was like, well, what do they say? They get him on the dragon. Well, what if he just flies away? And how do they deal with it? They chase him down? Do they kill him in the air? What if he? Like, the logistics of how to get him back with the dragon are tricky at best. That's what I kind of chalked it up to.
It gives them the responsibility, the difficulty of dealing with the dragon too. Maybe for all they know, it'll screw them up.
Go
or
ahead,
something.
take this dragon back. Is it going to fall? Is it going to fly off? Is it going to burn random people?
Well,
and eat the sheep around Old Town?
The bigger question really is, like, why would he not be suspicious? Like, of course, you would think the dragon would follow the rider naturally, and they wouldn't, like, hold him back,
I don't think that's
more
true.
of what I would have expected.
Or Daeron might insist on it himself.
I don't think that's necessarily true. We see that with Silverwing, but we haven't really seen that behavior with the other ones.
all of those are reasons that Daemon should have had to be somewhat suspicious. I think there were clues.
Yeah, no one of these things is like an obvious flaw or whatever.
Sure.
But when you add it all up, there should be some suspicion. But Daemon's just beyond that. He's like, I did the job. See how good I am. I'm done.
He is. Next? It's consistent with how he behaves all episode. That's true. So I'm very curious to see, presumably very early next episode, how he reacts. He's gonna be like, he's not just gonna be like, oh, that Ormond, good trick on. He pulled a fast one on me. No, he'll be pretty mad. Probably. He was made a fool of. Yeah, like he's gonna be mad. Now,
one other little note I want to make here.
Sure.
Daemon kind of took a dig at Ulf there too. And in a way, in the surface, it might even seem like a compliment or, like a propping him up. But really, he's pointing out Ulf because he knows there's no way he would give it to Ulf, and knows it would be more insulting to Ormond for Ulf to get it. Like,
that's a good point.
That was really a dig at Ulf.
Especially the latter part, yeah. Especially to someone like Ormond, yeah.
And think about how Ulf responded. He was like, hey, yeah, give it to me. He's like, huh, yeah.
He didn't say anything. Yeah, he knew.
All right,
you're right. He knew it was an insult. Yeah. Or he perceived it anyway.
I was reminded of one of our...
He's scared to say anything.
He is scared, I think. He's just scared of Daemon in general, yeah.
I was just reminded of one of our favorite bits in that show, Norseman, that Ulf is just like, huh?
What did you say?
What'd you say? Like,
I couldn't hear
this. He just, like, heard, like, Daemon say something and point to him, and he looked at Hugh like, I think he said something about us, man.
Did he?
That's honestly what I think Ulf heard. I don't think he heard any of the details.
Dude, these dragons are loud, man. I can't hear anything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's way up there. They are far. I don't know. I don't think he heard, you're going to be the Lord of Old Town. He just knew that Daemon was talking about him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as for the fans, hidden Targaryens, that's nothing new. This is a bit of an inverse, though, since it was a fake Targaryen. Alan was shaving his white hair. Egg was shaving his. And people have wondered about Varys just because he shaved his hair. Young Griff dyes his blue. This boy had his dyed blonde, etc. So not to mention a bunch of people in the world think Rhaenyra's sons are fake Targaryens too. Not that they don't have the blood, but that they're bastards, which, to be fair, they are. Now, I doubt Daemon is thinking historically, but maybe he was like, yeah, these high towers, they always give up. They didn't go to the field of fire. They didn't show up. They used the High Septon's dream as an excuse. Of course, here, the High Septon will be a problem rather than someone who just bends the knee. But we haven't gotten there yet. So let's take a gander real quickly at what Ormond was thinking here. It's the question Rhaenyra ends the episode with, essentially. She's like, what's his game? How could he possibly hope to accomplish anything in the long run? And it's really not the long run. The play itself it's what he can do during that time of uncertainty. We'll get into some of it in the preview episode, but he clearly has a plan, and it's, as I said, making it difficult to use dragons against Tumbleton without causing collateral damage. We'll also discuss some of the book fake Daeron stuff. There's a different whole set of stuff going on there. So it's clear that it was only meant to be a short-term intrigue. I really like it was cleverly highlighted, pun intended, by Rhaenyra looking at the hair at the end. We made a joke about how she could have done that with her sons, but that was the way to show that this couldn't have lasted more than a few days, right? It would never have lasted more than a few days because the hair color is going to come back out. You're going to see his roots, and that will give the game up, let alone the kid not talking. That's why the threat that Ormond gave this child, say, we'll hang your mother, if you give up. They don't need him to hold out very long. As long as he keeps his mouth shut for a couple of days, that's all it takes. And that's all it did take. And they were right. So they aimed for their goal and hit it. I assume this means they were a little closer to Tumbleton in the first place, which makes sense given the other way the timeline played out in terms of the messenger reaching them from King's Landing. So that already implied they were closer than we might have thought from where they start in the books. But that's okay, because at least it's consistent. He used that time to get to Tumbleton, put the dragon inside, has the real Daeron inside the city as well. And from there, we'll see. But if you can see, look at the map here Shay has up it on screen helpfully. You can see Tumbleton not that far from King's Landing, right? Look at that. There's a river there between them. That's the Blackwater. So there's some terrain, but it is not a great distance. And with that, things can happen. It's interesting, right? And there's, of course, a wrinkle. We have Cat Hughes' wife was mentioned as going there. She's now a potential hostage if Ormond knows who she is, which, he doesn't. I'm not sure there's any way for him to discover that, but it's certainly a wrinkle. There's other ways that could be a wrinkle, as we'll discuss later. Since he threatened to kill fake Daeron's mom, he could certainly do other things with hostages. It is kind of a race to the bottom strategy, very fitting for the Dance of the Dragons. This is like people are using the commoners as leverage in their battle strategies. Like, well, this looks bad for us, the High Towers are thinking, but we can make it look worse for Rhaenyra. It strikes directly at her strategy, too, which is to win the people. She's willing to sacrifice some relationship with nobles, maybe too many of them, as we'll discuss, to win the people, but Ormond is specifically trying to make her look bad, not just in the eyes of the people, but the nobles as well. But that seems to be what he's aiming for. How he's going to do it, we'll see, but he has allies in the waiting, you might think, given some of the people he's upset. They can turn to him instead. That's an overarching flaw in Rhaenyra's approach to a number of problems in this episode, is that she doesn't view them as hers or not hers. She should be viewing them as hers or theirs. If they're not with her, they're against her. Potentially. That's just the reality of it. Anyone that's not on her side could join the High Towers. And part of the reason she wasn't seeing it that way is because of the same arrogance Daemon is seeing. In her case, it's more naivety than arrogance, but there is some of both. And it's that she thinks she's won when she clearly has not won yet. Remember Daemon joking about, I still said we should just incinerate them all. Whoops. Well, unfortunately, I wouldn't say he was right, but it's going to give him some clout about, like, he was generally right not to trust them. Not that his solution to burn them all was correct, but he was right that you can't trust them.
It's still a force to be reckoned with out there.
Yeah. So he's going to have a little bit of clout, next time he pushes for harsh measures, and Rhaenyra is kind of like not sure. She might lean in his direction because of something like he may even bring it up. And even Mysaria, who doesn't look likely to agree with Daemon on much, might agree when it comes to punishing the High Towers, because that's one thing that we've already seen she's quite willing to agree with Daemon on. Maybe the only thing so far.
It is. I still want to point out that, like, in the short term, this army might be used in a way that's detrimental to her. But think of the long-term effect of her burning that army. All those soldiers there, they all have wives and sons and farms to tend to, blacksmiths. Like, it's a huge elimination of resources for the realm and creation of people who want revenge. So I still think it would have been an awful mistake. Maybe he could have, should have, not maybe, kept a dragon. Make sure they go back. Send some scouts, send someone to oversee, have a dragon fly, make sure they actually go back. Maybe take more hostages than just the one boy.
That would have been smart.
There are a lot of other things they could have done, like, oh, that's done. What's next? There needed to be some follow-up. I don't think the follow-up is burn and kill everybody, but some sort of follow-up is more than none. Yep,
I agree. So Daemon has this discussion with her, and he kind of, interestingly, he says softly, she rejects this idea as like, no, I got to rule the way my father would. He would never do something like that. And he doesn't really argue. He does later about some other things, but at this point, he just says, at any rate, we must begin. And it's the gentlest he is in the episode. He's basically saying, that's kind of a thesis statement. Choose wisely, but choose. You can't be seen to hesitate or prevaricate. You have to present strength and confidence and certainty. A nervous ruler creates nervous followers, and that is a problem. These times are already turbulent, as the High Septon says. Now, Rhaenyra does some clever things towards the end, but several of them also seem primed to backfire. Vampirus99 says the super chat says, I thought a tell was that Tessarion didn't have a reaction or any distress from Daeron being taken hostage. Yeah, that's certainly a thing that maybe some people could have noticed. It's interesting. We don't know have a lot of examples on dragon behavior, but I think it's a clever thing to take note of for sure. Looking Glass Cosplay says, do you think Ormond assumed they just automatically kill the fake Daeron in the first few days before the hair becomes noticeable? I think he probably thought it through and guessed that if they did that would be one of the best case scenarios for them, because then the hair change wouldn't even be noticed. His hair would stop growing or something, or they would have already burned him or buried him, and they would get even more of a delay before figuring out what really happened. And
more justification in Daemon having been dishonorable. Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways it could have gone, and I think they looked at a range of outcomes, and most of the outcomes were really good. And any of the outcomes turn bad for them, they can just go ahead with the legitimate surrender. They go, no, okay, we're really surrendering this time. So we had to try. Come on, you had to give me a chance. I had to try, right? All right, we really surrender for real this time.
Like, it's highly unlikely that Daemon just immediately kills him. And the main thing they're trying to do is just buy a couple days' time. Almost any of the most likely scenarios include a couple days' time, which is what they needed. So.
Yeah.
If only Rhaenyra had shown Alicent Daeron as soon as he got there, they would have had a little bit more time there.
Point.
And it's lucky that Alicent was, in fact, still there, still alive, hadn't escaped. All of these things came together.
Yeah.
Or he would have just been sent on up to the wall.
Yeah, Ormond might have had no idea whether Alicent would still be alive or not. Yeah, that's a good point. He might have thought she was dead. So if so, that might have been better. He might have thought that was better for him in terms of his decoy. So yeah, Rhaenyra Triumphant is the name of the episode. It's nicknamed after a section of Fire and Blood.
So sorry, I just had one last thing I wanted to point out. It was interesting, I thought, that Ormond wanted proof when Daemon made all these claims, like, oh, do you have any proof? And Daemon kind of, well, we got these dragons, it doesn't matter, But later that comes up again when the Septon's like, oh, Aegon's dead? Where's his body? He wanted proof too. So I think that might be, and especially with Rhaenyra trying to make this claim that Aegon is dead, that's one of the things you mentioned it might backfire on her. So.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't actually say Aegon. I don't think Daemon claimed Aegon was dead. I think he just claimed your nephews were fled.
Yeah, I think Aegon hadn't yet, but he made several claims.
He said Otto was dead.
He said Otto was dead.
Your uncle
is
dead.
Did say he said Otto's dead.
Your nephews are fled.
Your nephews are fled.
I think he specifically announced that they were still alive by saying it that way.
Yeah.
Because he said plural.
Regardless, I don't think Rhaenyra hadn't made that decision. Daemon didn't make that claim yet.
Right.
However, whatever claims Daemon was making, Ormond still wanted proof. He's like, rumors are like flies around here. Am I just going to believe you? And it's a little different than what the Septon was challenging Rhaenyra on, and the claim that it seems like Rhaenyra is going to make. But the idea is that people are going to want proof. It's not enough to just say this to turn hearts.
And that is what she intended to show in the first place, was his head. So yeah, it is a very dangerous decision that she's playing this game, and we'll talk about it more in a minute here. The episode is nicknamed after a section of Fire and Blood. It's the fourth of 6 sections of this part of Fire and Blood, the part dedicated to the Dance of the Dragons, with the 7th part being the Aftermath. So there's a lot of straight forward signs for it. For example, throughout the entire episode, until the very end, until the actual final scene, people are busy in the Red Keep de-greensing it, taking out all their stuff, the banners, the heraldry. It's a constant. As the episode is going through, we see it in a number of different scenes. As she receives news from the Dragon Keeper about Tumbleton in the final moment, she turns to see it all burning, as she had ordered in just a few moments before. So she's mad and that's her reaction to Tumbleton, that she wants to do something like that, basically just burn it. But it's just her initial reaction. The Dragon Keeper tells her, well, there's all those innocents there. And she's like, yeah, okay. Well, what is he doing? What is his game? She's just doesn't understand what he thinks he's up to. She is baffled that he hasn't given up. She thinks she's too strong and doesn't understand what he hopes to accomplish. Things like, what is this guy? How could he possibly? She thinks he's being stupid, right? That's kind of her perspective on it because she thinks she's unassailable relatively. But there's no point in the episode where she actually seems all that triumphant, right? The music never matches the vibe. It is definitely the darkest music for a Game of Thrones episode we've ever had by far. Even the happiest moment of the episode, which is not saying much, like, for example, one of the happiest moments or most shocking moments is when she drops the hammer on the nobles who hoarded food. The music isn't like, ha-ha. It's like, oh, this is going to cause more problems. This is just a link in the chain towards other bad situations. Even when she distributes the hoarded food to the people, it's like muted. There's like some triumph, but underneath the tones there's like anxiety and chaos and the promise of not so good things to come. I would actually describe the music as similar to the movie Eyes Wide Shut, except that I didn't hate it because I hated the music in Eyes Wide Shut. It's my least favorite soundtrack of all time. There's this jarring chord that plays throughout the movie at kind of semi-random times. Here, it's not random. The chord also isn't nearly as jarring. They just went over the top with it in Eyes Wide Shut. I think they did it right here. They went for unsettling and did it right, whereas Eyes Wide Shut was just too unsettling. Anyway, it's still is going to have that effect, though. I think a lot of people, if you're not being really conscious of the music, it might leave you feeling unsettled, and you might not even know why, because it was just very constant and never really gave way to anything positive. It was either silent or dark. And that's what it was in having these jarring, dissonant chords.
I would say.
Sure,
sometimes
intense.
It got kind of intense. Sometimes it had, I don't know, hints of eeriness or whatever, but...
Yeah. A lot of scenes changed with the jarring chord. Like when Alicent and Rhaenyra argued, or when the rat meals were delivered, when she sees Jace's ghost, a person who looks like Jace, really. And then when she sees Baela, and then when Daeron is outed, and when...
The confrontation with the Corlys.
Yes, the confrontation with the Corlys, right. And there's a really weird, like, squelching, stretching sound at the beginning of the scene with Corlys where he yells at her that I kept trying to listen to. And I'm like, what is that? This is a really weird sound that I don't think I heard anywhere else in the episode. So, yeah, the music alone is just super interesting in this episode. I wish they could do, like, a special just about it.
I have a couple thoughts about this. In that, one, I felt that the music, yeah, you're right, was used to change the scene, and I felt that kind of gave this sense of her like dissociating and her kind of being swept from one thing to the other, and she's just suddenly in something. Like, how did I get here now? You know, like it gave that effect to me. But the other thing is, you know, her having her period of it all, which is that she's just, you know, also miserable from that, among other things. You can tell her stomach is upsetting her. When you talk about like a squelching sound, I'm like, is that like the internal sound, like in her head of like her insides churning and like squeezing? I don't know. I have to listen to the sound. I'm not actually sure which one you're talking about, but I felt it very viscerally, like the sense of like just being sick to your stomach, and you're like just trying to get through your day, and it's like the hardest day imaginable, and you're haunted by the ghosts of your father, your mother, your son. Like it was very visceral, and I think the music was a big part of it, as well as the staging, the framing, the really close-up shots of her like sweat on her brow, or her grimacing, or her hands like fidgeting and twisting. It was really well done.
One quick thing I want to point out, there was a little flare of music in the scene when she laid down next to Daemon. It was, I don't know how to describe it. It sounded kind of, it was, often the music was kind of muted, kind of quiet, but still distinct. And it was like, almost like a modern instrument. I don't know how to say it, like something synthesized. And I was like, oh, that was an interesting little flare of a sound there. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but watch that scene again. You'll hear it. And another comment I wanted to make, a little bit of a tangent, but in that moment when she said just burn it, when it had pulled all the green stuff down, on one hand, it makes sense for her to have that mentality. And it's also maybe a symbolic gesture. But they didn't make a symbolic scene of it. They didn't gather the crowds around and do a big bonfire in the middle of the day. They just on the spot, middle of the night, just set it on fire. And it made it for a good cinematic moment. But I'm still thinking about the idea of the effort that went into that dress she tore up and that scene when Olenna talked about that. All these things are just huge amounts of effort and resources went into these things. They're just being burned, and they could still be used. They could be repurposes, blankets or canvases. Or Masari even said the line that the people need fuel for their fires. And there's just this waste of resources just literally going up in smoke here.
So they use a lot of other techniques to remind us that this is Rhaenyra's POV rather than a normal type of episode. There's like sounds that fade as her thoughts wander. There's a few techniques they used before, like Rhaenyra had a moment that's similar to a moment Alicent had in the council chamber where she starts to disassociate and the voices change, and it's like she's hearing them from a distance even as she's still right there and the camera focuses on her. This is the exact same moment that Ashay has put on screen. I almost called you Rhaenyra. Put on screen here where that happens to her, where she starts disassociating a bit and the voices kind of run together and they sound a lot more distant. So yeah, it's a really cool way to focus in on that. She even has this neat comment at the beginning where she says, "The air is thick with ghosts, not unkind ones." She talks about how she would run to see her father anytime she learned a new tune. So that was an interesting choice for them to write it that way, a new tune, given how the music was so important this episode. I wonder if that was a little way for them to hint at, hey, pay attention to the music here. Karina Strick says, "How dare you say that about Eyes Wide Shut?" I love you guys. Yeah. No, that movie really it just doesn't work for me. Money matters is the next section. It's certainly a big, important part of the logistics of it all. Everything costs money, and there isn't much at all. So that really is a good place to start with the problems of the administration, because it sets the tone for so much else. Like several scenes, this one begins with that jarring chord. It even begins with Orwell's voice before you see him. That's kind of another little technique they're using, the POV effect, I suppose. So Rhaenyra is very big on the symbols of legitimacy. She thinks that the coronation is really important. You can see part of where she's coming from, the uncertainty of the succession. It's a civil war. I mean, legitimacy is at odds here. It's been contested. So she has to kind of prove that she's not what the usurper said. And in the BTS, Emma Darcy makes this very clear, too, that she thinks Rhaenyra is obsessed with this and becomes very frustrated when it's not so possible. To be fair, she kind of backs down on it. She's like, yeah, well, maybe I'll just have an anointment and we can have a proper ceremony later. But she feels like she's given up something pretty big. And Mazzari points out that, well, yeah, the people can't really tell the difference between an expensive coronation focused on legitimacy and a big party just saying, haha, we won. If the people are hungry, they're not going to really make that distinction, if they would even make that distinction in the first place. And it is kind of funny, though, that she's thinking a lot like her father and thinking my father must just... So it does make sense that she would turn to like, yeah, we got to have parties and tournaments and stuff. That is what her father would do. That is like, in terms of what she learned from her father, that was an example he set, for sure. Orwell says the only person Tylan might have told about the council was Ironrod, or about the gold, rather, was Ironrod. And yeah, it's believable. What Orwell is doing is clever. Either he's telling the truth or he's saying reasonable, believable things that are too reasonable and believable to call him out on. In the book, Tylan did split the gold into 4 places, and yeah, they tortured him and he still didn't talk. So it lands the show in a similar place where we honestly don't really know where it is for the most part. You know, they might have changed some of it. We do end up learning where some of the destinations were in the book, but they may not be the same here. Certainly she thinks about Casterly Rock as a possible destination. That's one of the most logical, sensible things you would think. And she mentions Lady Johanna, which was cool to get that shout out. Lady Johanna is a character in our Red Kraken episode and the follow-up episode, The Lion, the Kraken, and the Seahorse, which is, like a side war that's happening during all this other stuff. Mazzari thinks Orwell's telling the truth for what it's worth, and that starts a little conflict between Daemon and her, where he challenges her authority to weigh in at all, and basically Rhaenyra confirms that she does have the authority to weigh in, and Mazzari gets kind of a self-satisfied smile when he does that. Alicent also has no idea where the gold is, and we have every reason to believe her. Rhaenyra gets mad about it, but comes around, and when she thinks about it, she's like, "Yeah, I'd be foolish to believe there's only one rat in the amongst the high towers." And yeah, it's a logical conclusion. She's not necessarily absolving Alicent of that, but it is more likely to be somebody else, and that she wasn't included in it. It all fits at least. But yeah, they've only got money for a few weeks, and there's so many problems. If we were to list every problem she was confronted with in this episode, it would be an extremely long list. Even just the effort of figuring out which is the highest priority seems difficult. Triarchy pirates are still active and taking ransoms of villagers and villages. Trade routes are going to be reestablished, but that's going to take time, right? Those are new deals have to be brokered, and the actual shipments have to float over. Corlys says, "Hey, why don't you bring in some of your small council? You need lots of people doing things. They could take a lot of this in hand." But she doesn't trust them. She definitely needs to delegate, though, right? Like, this is one of the problems, is she has so much to deal with. Not finding people that can help her is going to be a problem. So that arguably is one of her highest priorities, is to get people that can help her manage all this, right?
Yeah, I've got several points building up in me. I want to try to get out here real quick. One, clearly she needs to delegate. Like, that's just a thing in leadership in general. And especially when you've just taken over and things are in a semi-state of chaos. But even that process itself is difficult, right? You can't just magically instantly do that. And until it's done, certain things have to be dealt with. A lot of which, and this is why I love when shows do point out issues of logistics, because a lot of these things in the big picture are easy to push down as a low priority, especially from someone in a position of power and or from a position of it always having been taken care of and you didn't have to worry about it. Like the candles. That one guy's like, "Look, we're going to be sitting in the dark. Like I know you need to fight this army and set the new tax policy, but you're going to be doing it in the dark if we don't have candles." Some things have a little bit more immediate importance that usually people in positions of power aren't even thinking about at all. And I really love that scene. I think it was following up this, when she walks out and just all these people come at her with all these little things. And the music was used really well there too. It swelled and it got more chaotic and the voices started to blur. And it suddenly kind of all got quiet. And Luther, is that the Gold Cloak commander? It's like,
yeah, Luther,
all right,
yeah.
that's enough. It's a really good cinematic moment, and also presented the types of issues that she has that seem like small minutia details. But this is leading me to my other point. I think the rats were a motif. I mean, clearly they're a motif, but let me tell you what I think. There's that one scene when kind of big picture issues are being dealt with. Maybe it might have even been the scene. And she's walking out and there's a rat. And I think Orwell's like, "Oh yeah, Aegon killed all the rats." And I think what we're seeing
all the
here
rat catchers. All the rat catchers.
Rat catchers, sorry. Yes, thank you. The result of that decision had an impact. And I think a lot of this episode is showing us either decisions that have been made having their impact. Like, Jasper knows where the money, we killed Jasper. Otto might have known, we killed Otto. Like, things that they've already decided on are having impacts that they weren't thinking about. And I think that's going to keep happening. A lot of decisions are being made here. And I think they're not necessarily even bad decisions. And some of the decisions are going to have good consequences. But some of them have consequences that no one is even thinking about. Some of those are going to be bad. And I'm going to go ahead and say, you pointed out how the thread ripped in the opening sequence, and I think you described it as the realm being torn apart. It might more specifically, since the main theme being featured in that opening sequence was the Blacks, is the Blacks being torn apart. We see little reasons for Ulf to maybe lose loyalty, and now Corlys, and now maybe Hugh. Not yet, but she's like, "Oh yeah, I made promises about your family." And I love that line. She said, "I'm awash." What'd she say? "I'm awash in deficiencies and dilemmas," I think. And yes, she is. And some of the people who have sworn loyalty to her are gonna be affected by these deficiencies and dilemmas, and she might start to lose loyalty. It reminds me a little bit too of how Daemon got loyalty from the Kingsguard and Dragonstone. He brought his dragon out and threatened him with fear. All right, well, when that fear is not present, the loyalty will be gone. Now, some of those people might have just been loyal anyway, which makes it all the worse for Daemon to threaten them with fear. But some of these people might start to have legitimate reasons to lose their loyalty. Some of the individuals, in power, like Corlys or whoever, and maybe some of the people of the land. If Ormond is out there just taking over cities, that also plays into this theme of her looking for legitimacy. How could she really say she's in charge of the realm when a town just outside of King's Landing could just be taken over by the Hightower Hour? Anyway, I think the rats
You're right.
are a motif for decisions that are being made and the implications that are coming from them.
Yeah, and I like how it was the rats were responsible for this candle thing that you brought up too. That was directly connected to that. And yeah, I like that idea that it's the results of these decisions from before. Now, speaking of decisions from before.
Sorry. You made me think of something else just now. Rhaenyra is also being faced with this idea of having to make tough decisions that she wouldn't normally make or she wouldn't normally like, right? Alicent kind of presents that. Think of someone like Otto, who just knew it was a bad idea to kill the rat catchers. And he was kind of focused on the PR of it, which also, by the way, Rhaenyra has said gestures matter. That is a thing. And she maybe is forgetting the gesture that matters to Corlys, but there are these other implications of these decisions are going to play out in bad ways that Rhaenyra or Otto and some other people, we were like disgusted with him for making some of these decisions. Like, you're just going to have to go kill the blacks. And Alicent just could not conceive that he was even saying this, right? Now, Rhaenyra is being faced with the idea of killing the greens. And there might be other tough decisions she has to make, like, well, the people are going to have to starve. We can't kill the rat catchers because they'll eat the candles. She didn't even know the candles would be an issue. But you see what I'm saying? She's going to have to make decisions, choice to evil type decisions, the better of two evils. And she's going to have to live with the lesser of two evils, even if she made, quote unquote, the right choice.
Yeah, and she doesn't seem very willing to do that, to make these compromises. She doesn't see herself as a compromiser. And that's a huge problem throughout the episode, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit later. That's some good setup for now. Another character who felt betrayed based on, was treated badly earlier was Lady Jane. She didn't send soldiers as promised, but she wasn't sent the dragon she was promised, which is why she didn't do that. Now, she is connected to Rhaenyra by blood, so there is more of a connection than one might recall otherwise, but that is something that, as we saw with the Baratheons, you can lean on too much. The Baratheon also had a connection to Rhaenyra, connection to Rhaenys, and it still wasn't enough to keep him on their side. So there's a lot of things potentially happening up there with this veil thing. Let's talk about that briefly, because there's a number of things happening all at once there, like kind of converging there. She orders Joffrey brought back from the veil because he's now her heir. And Daemon says he will relish this mission to the Vale. And that's not a good sign because, again, this is an ally, an important ally. You want money from them. This person watched over your kids, and they have a bunch of untapped resources. They're extremely important. But Daemon's going to be your representative? Like, this guy is the wrong choice.
Like, there's already bad blood between Aarons and Daemon because of his marriage, right?
Yes.
And death of his wife.
It's
suspicious death.
So he's really he doesn't like a lot of Rhaenyra's planning, but he does like a lot of other aspects of it. Like when she says she demands tribute from the great houses, he's like, that's right. That's right. He like nods like, absolutely, we should do that.
He likes the exertion of power.
Especially to solve the current problem of money, which he really thinks the way a lot of nobles do. You see this in the Song of Ice and Fire in various places. Some of these lords and kings, like Robert Baratheon's a good example, they're so far above, or they picture themselves as so far above it all that even money problems are beneath them. That's for someone else to handle. It's like, actually, that's like one of the main things you're supposed to handle, man. But no, that's just how they see it. It's like, oh, the money, counting coppers is for accountants, and that's what we have them for, right? That's what the Master of Coin is for. Yeah, like, that's why Littlefinger got away with so much, because it's beneath the lords of Westeros to pay attention to that sort of thing. Daemon is reflecting that kind of on steroids. He thinks it's a trifle, right? He thinks that, and he does. It's not just because he's arrogant, although that is part of it. It's because now he's also fueled by thinking they have this higher purpose. He's taken this notion of the prophecy being their responsibility, twisted it somewhat into, were superior because of it also, which, you know, I mean, they do have the dragons. There's a certain argument to that, but he's obviously taking it way too far. So...
Can I tell you, I thought Daemon was one of his more dislikable versions of himself in this episode in a number of ways, including twisting the prophecy kind of for what he thinks it should be and not... I mean, I get how he got there, but he also had one very likable moment.
I agree.
Right here, when he is clearly crestfallen at Simon's death. He hears the Castellan and his sons, and you have this moment where, like, he looks down and he makes this face right here, like, he makes a face like, damn it, I left and he died, and, like, I don't know, it was a human moment.
Yeah, and then he asked about Alice, and then they're like, I don't know about it, what the deal with Alice is. More on that, because it's really... Hang on, I'll give you... I know you're itching to chat. Throw some stuff in here, Sean. Let me do a little more setup here.
He makes sure to say a maester of sorts. He also thinks it's crazy to call her a witch.
Yeah, it's like a maester of sorts, and there's no word of her. Like, Vhagar is gone, Aemon is gone, no word about her. Now, we know that almost certainly she went with him. That would explain it. But in terms of what was said before, it's definitely ironic that she says, hey, let's just give Harrenhal to the slayer of Aemon. Too bad Daemon hadn't made that offer to Alice, or too bad she doesn't know about that offer.
Does she not know about the phrase? Like, didn't, like...
I have that for later. Let's talk about that later. It's too much at once, but you're right to bring that up. But so basically, yes, Daemon is concerned, and this also comes back in the moment of the knighting of Ulf and Adam and Hugh, which is, I have more to say about it later, but that scene is right after the time he finds this out. So again, every time he's crappy to them, it happens right after he's learned that they've screwed up. And this is first time he learns that they've screwed up. Second time he learns the consequences of that screw up, which is that, look, if you guys had gone after Vhagar as you were ordered, Simon Strong might still be alive. So he, you know, like, I can forgive him for being mad about that.
He might be dead, and both of those dragons are dead, and they're down dragons, and it was worse. He just can't say.
Yeah, he just doesn't.
So,
know. Yeah. So it's definitely, you can understand why he's upset there. I totally agree with you. That was his one soft moment in the whole episode. We got much more range out of him last episode, but he's at court. We made that point. He's bad at court, great on the field. She needs to go ahead and send him out, and she needs to find an enemy to deploy him against ASAP. Well, now we have one, Ormond Hightower. But in the meantime, like, definitely don't send him to the Vale. Don't make him your representative to people you're trying to win over. If you're trying to intimidate them or fight them, absolutely send him. But if you want them as your friends, he's the worst, the absolute worst. Yeah, Rhaenyra is bad at this. She doesn't have, this is the part she wasn't trained at. Her father got away with a lot of things because it was an easy time. Didn't have to make consensus, didn't have to win allies. But Rhaenyra consistently is pushing for things, asking for things, expecting for things without giving. But that's an overarching theme. I promised you some time here, Sean, and now I'm getting ahead of myself. So please, let me hear your thoughts on these last few points.
Only really one minor one. I just thought it was interesting the way Daemon referred to Alice as a maester of sorts. I wonder if it's something that the show maybe is doing for the audience's sake. The maester is sort of like the doctor, sort of like the king's doctor. Now, we know the maester is much more than that, although that is a primary role of the maester. And Alice was sort of serving that role, right? She was sort of like the doc. She healed Daemon. And she sort of had the confidence of the master of the castle, if you will, and also was knowledgeable beyond maybe about history and lore. You know, she has a lot of attributes that a maester has. But in the same way that Ulf maybe should have known when he referred to her as a maester that she couldn't be because women aren't maester. But Daemon is doing the same thing here. So, I don't think the show was trying to change the world such that women could be maesters. But that the role of a maester is a doctor maybe is what they're... She
was taking that role, clearly. There wasn't a maester there, and there was her, and she was doing this. So that's why he said of sorts, because he knows that they can't, but that's why he added that qualifier, but he didn't know what else to call her either, right? Like you said, he's like he wasn't going to say the word witch like you did.
One other thought I had is that, all sorts of parallels to be drawn, but I was a little surprised that Alicent didn't clarify to Rhaenyra. They kicked me off the council. Aemon kicked me off the council. You know what I mean? Like, you can't expect me to know. But similarly, Aemon was sending council members away. Now, he was doing it basically when they didn't do or like what he said, right? Anyone kind of like talk back a little to his intentions, like, all right, you need to go to this mission. Get out of here. Go. Krista Cole, take the army. Go. Tylan, go off to the Triarchy. You know, anyone that talked back a little bit, he had some mission for them away from him, away from King's Landing, out of the council. Rhaenyra is trying to bring people into the council. Like, I suppose she's kind of exiled, you know, her formal council, but like Mysaria, she named as Mistress of Whisperers. Daemon kind of raised an eyebrow at that. Daemon is hard to say exactly what Daemon is. He's almost the hand of the king or a king's guard. He's kind of a mix of roles.
He's her husband. He's the king.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, he's the king.
Yeah.
King consort is his official title.
Yeah, that's
just,
true.
It's only come up a couple times, but it has come up, yeah.
But she is, you know, you said that she's kind of having these expectations but not giving. She's trying to give. Like, she promised Ulf this castle, or house rather, and she's like, yeah, you know, I told you. He's like, okay, yeah, but when? She's like, as soon as I can. And she took this stuff from the nobles, but to give to the poor people. The thing is, she only has so much to give. I do think she wants to give. And she told Alicent and Helena, like, look, I won't kill your son. And I'll give you a maid, you know, I'll treat you kind. But Helena's like, I don't want a maid. I want chickens, you know. She's, you know, she doesn't have that much to give, and or she's given things that people don't really want. And she is also taking. And I want to try to give her credit. She's trying really hard to do the right thing and to be kind. Even she was maybe even trying to give too much in some ways, like at the petition. She's like, maybe you guys can hunt in Kingswood. And Corlys like, whoa, ho, ho.
Everybody reacted. Even the commenters were like, whoa. Yeah, even they thought it was like kind of wild. Yeah. And remember he said, we could discuss that at a later time at a different forum.
And I'm probably getting ahead of myself here, but that was a great parallel to Aegon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Same scene, basically.
And Otto's holding him back, you know.
Yeah.
But I want to give her, like, I do see some of the flaws in her decisions, and I see how they're setting up things to backfire. But I don't think she's being a terrible leader right now. I think she's in a terrible position and is getting unlucky. And we just kind of know how things go in a way that it would be hard for her or anyone to in this position. Even the idea of like,
I think some of her decisions are downright terrible.
She's had, 24 hours? You know, like some of them might be terrible, but think how many decisions she's had to make.
Oh yeah.
For a time period. She's probably made, on screen, we probably saw her make 30 decisions, and she probably made 50 more off screen, and 2 of them were terrible. Percentage-wise, she's doing okay, you know? And even the terrible ones are still with good intentions, so.
Yeah, well, some of those we'll discuss more individually. We have a super chat from Kizzy SD, says, you think the Lost Gold could be the way they introduce good old Dalton Greyjoy? Could ask him to raid Lannister Port and bring back spoils. Yeah, that's an interesting possibility. I mean, it would be a way to kind of get what she's looking for, and it would kind of look bad, so you could see how it would fit the plot that way. It wouldn't look good for Rhaenyra, but it would be a way to exact what that house owes. You know, they were particularly against her, and she might, especially if she finds out or has reason to believe that some of the crown's gold is stored there.
I exclaimed when they said Lady Johanna. I'm like, I was very excited. I would love to see her or Dalton or any of that little side story. And if you want to hear more about it, and we might not see it on the screen, I will plug our episodes on Johanna and the Lion, the Kraken, and the Seahorse.
That's right. Red Kraken series, 2 episodes scripted with Radio Westeros, available to patrons and subscribers on Spotify. So yeah, now at this point that you made, Ashea, let's talk about that. The bit about Harrenhal. Yeah, Aemond is the target. She says that, hey, dragon riders, you kill a dragon rider, you get a reward. They start to get specific about it. Now, before they get specific about it, she says riders plural, because sheep stealer is included in that. She has put an undefined bounty on her own niece. What is Rhaena to her? Is it cousin or niece?
Stepdaughter.
Stepdaughter. Oh, yeah, because they're married now. It was her
And-
niece, and then
and
she
her
married
niece,
Daemon
yeah,
and
she's
became
multiple things.
both, yeah. Daemon's daughter, either way. Very bad. Daemon certainly wouldn't agree with the bounty on her if he knew who it was. So that is relevant, but the more current point, the more frontal point here about Harrenhal is, yes, Jace promised House Frey Harrenhal at the end of the war if they bent their knees. So this does need to be addressed or it becomes a plot hole. But frankly, we've seen a lot of footage of Riverland's armies. I haven't seen Frey soldiers. I have not seen the Frey banner anywhere yet. So maybe they are not living up to their promise, and it's as simple as that. But if we start seeing Frey soldiers, then we might have a plot hole or something that needs to be addressed, or else it becomes a plot hole.
They made a two-part promise. One was to let the Stark soldiers through.
And that
They
happened.
did that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The next was to bend the knee. Now, bend the knee might carry with it commit troops, but that wasn't delineated, So on one hand, the phrase might have some kind of plausible deniability, but also Rhaenyra may have some sort of justification to say, never mind, you don't get Harrenhal after all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There are answers. It just has to be addressed. Otherwise, that is kind of should be explained. So we'll see how they go with that. I wouldn't declare it a problem yet, but it needs to be addressed.
I do want to point out, though, that I don't expect this to happen. Although I don't think there's no way that it could happen. But it seems like a lot for them to have this whole scene last episode of Alicent saying, I want Harrenhal, and then Aemon shows up. And now this episode, Rhaenyra says, I'll give Harrenhal to whoever gives me Aemon. That seems like they're setting something up there. I don't know how that would go. Daemon also knows both sides, both ends of this. Would he go back? I mean, could he go back to her? He's scared he might die if he goes back there. That's what she told him, right? So I don't know. Yep,
it's definitely set up. You're not wrong, and you're right to see it as a wash with possibilities. So, super chat or comment from Incoming Com, who says, hello, did you discuss Daemon's report that Baela had seen Sunfire deceased and decomposing? We had not yet, but that's a good time. We may as well do that now. So let's start with Baela, because she sees Baela. Well, let's start with Jace. She sees Jace in the hallway. It's not actually him, but it's a dude who kind of looks like him, and that's not a kind ghost. She's talked about there's not unkind ghosts in the Red Keep, and that one was unkind. She stops short, and this scene comes right after she's met young Daeron, and she's thinking of ways to be merciful. And after she sees Jace, she's like, why shouldn't I just kill them? So just seeing him, it turns her mood violent. It brings her back her thoughts of revenge, and that's very notable. Then she later sees Baela in the hallway, and it's actually Baela. It's not some sort of vision or whatever. She just doesn't want to talk to Baela. She's just not, I'm not speaking to you right now. And then later at the council meeting, because there's a couple council meetings, she asks about Baela for her report. And but she says it weirdly. She says, did Baela return yet? And she's like, well, she returned. You saw her out there in the hallway, but Daemon doesn't know that she saw her out in the hallway, so it is a little...
I wondered if she was really seeing Baela, or if that was a vision, or
it might not be. I'm not super confident.
They sent Baela. Yeah. I was uncertain about that.
But Baela was there, so I mean, in the castle.
She asked about Baela after she sees her in the hallway, not at that early council scene. Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, she's later. She's like, and then that's when Daemon says she's back. The only dragon she saw was Sunfire dead and decomposing, and she's going out again tomorrow. And then she says, send Adam with her. So that he can, well, not with her, but to go also, so that there's 2 dragons out scouting. So that's very relevant as well.
This was a rough scene when she does see Baela, and I do think, she did see Baela, and they're both kind of wandering the halls like ghosts here themselves, and Baela's full of grief, being run ragged probably from spending all her days flying around. She lost her betrothed. Her father's probably, even though he's there, I doubt they're talking about much at all, ever. Her stepmother isn't much of a maternal figure to her at all and seems to hate her. She doesn't have her sister, doesn't know where her sister is. It just seems really lonely for Baela right now. I hope she's finding solace in Corlys and Alan and Adam like we saw in the last episode, but she's not at dinner with them.
I know, that was notable. She wasn't at that dinner, right? Yeah, of course.
I don't know
Rhaenyra
if
doesn't
she's just come back, so she missed the dinner, or if Corlys didn't have her at the dinner because it was a private thing he had to ask, or what. But I would my guess is that she gets home and she goes and sees Corlys and Alan and Adam and talks to them.
Yeah, that would be the few people that seems like they would make sense. Their family, so the closest family she has.
Another note I want to make. And this would somewhat apply to Baela, but specifically Rhaenyra, especially talking about the difficult situation that she's in. There's this whole other element that we haven't even addressed that came up in the episode when I think it was Helena was like, did it make you feel better? Killing Otto, did it make you feel better about your own son dying? And we know the answer is no. It did not make her feel better about that. But she hasn't really... That grieving is not done. That's also inside of her, on top of all this other stuff. And it's probably there for Baela too, right?
Definitely. So, Rhaenyra asked Daeron some questions he's very unlikely to know the answers to. I think she knows that. She's just testing him to see how he reacts, because she next says that your treatment depends on your behavior. And she's frustrated in part because she doesn't want to kill him. And the more silent he acts, the more he's kind of pushing her to make the decision that she doesn't want to make. His silence is kind of dooming him, and she doesn't like that. She doesn't want to kill a kid. So I think this is one of the strongest themes of the episode, one that has come up in A Song of Ice and Fire, especially with Targaryens. It's Aemon Targaryen, Maester Aemon, who tells Jon to kill the boy, which is very similar to Alicent saying things like, there is a door in you that must shut. You will do things your heart would have recoiled from. The difference is, of course, Jon is younger and had a much different upbringing, and has already been shown very early in his arc that he is able to accept tough truths. That's just something that was established about him right away. Tyrion's impressed by it. Jon argues for like 5 seconds before he's convinced that, yep, actually the Night's Watch is mostly full of thieves and murders, and he's oh well, if that's what it is. Yeah, so Rhaenyra hasn't been on that same arc. I would compare her more to Egg, who gets that same speech from Maester Aemon, but we don't know how Egg reacts to it. So he does become a king, and Egg does face some of the same problems Rhaenyra is facing. He is pro-commoner, and the lords don't really want to listen to him. So there is some similarities there, more of which are probably likely to come. But in Jon's case and in Egg's case, it's not quite so literal as having an actual boy as the challenge that sort of marks that transition of, well, literally kill the boy. Because in their case, it's like, no, you got to kill the boy inside you. That's what Aemon says. Kill the boy inside you, let the man be born. This is kill this cousin of yours, this nephew of yours. Half-brother, right, half-brother, I'm sorry. She says
to him, which just makes it all the harder. Like, you can tell she feels a little bit of a softness to him, and she's looking in his face for features of her father, or maybe of Alicent, I guess, but I don't know. Her brother.
Yeah, her half-brother, you're right.
A kinslayer, I guess.
I said it the other way because Daemon called him nephew, and I'm like, wait, no, that's Daemon's her uncle, and so she wants things to go a certain way, so she doesn't have to make
straight, Aziz. They're all so simple and straightforward. I don't understand.
So that's really powerful. I think that Rhaenyra is facing a similar growth stage and with using similar language, and I think, at least I hope, that they got some inspiration for the writing for this episode from some of those things that George wrote for Aemon and for Egg. And that is something that comes up in a variety of ways this episode. But we'll come back to the final scene a little bit later. Let's talk about her actual facing the commons. Before she actually goes to meet them, she gets dressed for it. Now, this is important. She is able to plan for this one, unlike the very important unplanned meeting she has with the High Septon, which goes very poorly. This one doesn't go great with the commons, but it does go at least not badly. We're reunited with Elinda Massey first, and that's nice. She was very dependable for Rhaenyra in a variety of ways. Here she's got a sense of presentation, what ornaments are good for making the right statements, and of course she was even more skillfully as an intriguer. She was the one who set up the whole Dragon Siege thing. It wasn't her idea, but she facilitated it boots on the ground inside King's Landing. So really, really powerful, or really, really useful person to have in your corner. and one of the few people that she probably isn't worried about.
Competent and trustworthy.
There you go. Now, this is symbolic. The Daemon would definitely disagree with the presentation. She's like, the sword? Partly because it's Jace's sword. You know, she wants to keep that by her. But Elinda's like, no, that's aggressive. You're trying to be open-handed. So and then she says, the chain for gravity. The sword, not the chain over the sword. Daemon would hate that. You know, like the one is like the chain. It's like maesterly. It's servitude. The sword that's their power. That's their strength. That's how they won this war. So, yeah.
I wanted to say I really appreciate two levels of this. One, she's choosing no jewelry, nothing that it just for show, nothing I don't need, right? And I think that's a good message for her to be sending, especially in this particular moment. But two, I think it's through the episode, thematically for her character, she's not really dressing like a queen. Like her garb is simple and dark and broad-shouldered. They're not showing leg and cleavage. She's trying to be more kingly. She's upset with being perceived as a weak woman, and she's presenting herself as more, I'm going to say, I don't know more what, but less queenly. She's not in some fancy white flowing pretty dress. She's in a simple, sturdy, dark dress with no ornamentation. You know what I mean? And I also think that the chain is almost too obviously symbolic that she's, restrained, in this role now.
And very uncomfortable. She wants to do this, but she's really like nervous, like she's going to be a performer. And it doesn't go that well. I mean, maybe part of the reason she's nervous is she knows she's not going to be able to give them what they want, at least not right away. So she's going to have to give them words, and that's, not really what they want. She's going to have to give promises instead of firm commitments, or instead of current tangibles. And frankly, she just doesn't have a lot of experience talking to common folk. She clearly believes in the whole noble blood versus common blood thing. There's actually a big difference there. And not to mention, she's got Daemon whispering in her ear, telling her that she's a god. At the same time she's been told she's a god, she has her period, which is like, that's very not godly. That's extremely human and normal. And
I like how she's sitting here, not only like leaning forward, because like you gotta strain to hear these people who aren't necessarily projecting, but I'm sure she's sitting like that because of her cramps.
Oh, good
That's
point.
the exact like position that she's contorted forward. It was very relatable.
I wondered if they were going to have that be the way that there's blood on the throne, and people thought she cut her hand, but it was actually her bleeding that way. And then she goes and rubs her hands on the sword.
But yeah, people would have hated it.
Yeah,
they would have gotten so many people mad. But yeah,
they do that in an interview with a vampire. People can get away with that. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, no, but I kept expecting her to cut herself. She put her hand on it makes me uncomfortable. She's touching the swords, and like she's uncomfortably rubbing it because she's uncomfortable, and it's like, but she still hasn't cut herself. I kind of expected to, but it hasn't happened yet. So they're kind of like building that tension, I guess.
Supposedly in the book, she did the first time cut herself, but it's a story in the book, and it didn't have to be the first time. It's
to a source that's not very nice to her, to put it mildly.
It's also showing that she's in a precarious position. Maybe she didn't get cut, but she's got to be careful. Also, there's a rat right next to her. Also, I think this scene did more of what I was saying earlier. It's showing how she is clever and she is well-intending, but she just has limited resources. She's like, the idea of like, well, shear the sheep before you give it to the dragon. That was a good idea, and that does solve one problem. But immediately, hold on, that's good, but we still need the meat. What do we do about that problem? She's like, I don't know. And her suggestion for that is kind of shut down. And like, even if people who would have benefited from her are kind of shocked that I was even thrown out. Like, I just want to go back to this idea of, I feel like they're showing her trying to do the right thing one step after another. And she just can't do the right thing. And that's where Alicent is warning her. Like, you're just going to have to make decisions that are, she didn't say it this way, but they're going to end up being the wrong thing because it's the lesser of two wrong things. You're constantly faced with a decision that has no good outcome, and you have to pick the best one, and it will have bad consequences, and you'll feel guilty, and people will blame you, but it was still better than the other choice.
that's kind of what I was getting into with her kind of unwillingness to compromise. That's the new reality Alicent has confronted her with, and it's correct. And we know it's correct for a variety of reasons, one of which being Alicent herself lived through it. She's like, I was just the queen, you know? Like, I know how this works. And yeah, and she's just not, she hasn't learned that. She hasn't accepted that that's the new reality. She says, I acknowledge the struggle, but I dispute that I must become what I'm not. Like, no. You're going to have to become what you're not. I mean, nobody wears that crown and isn't changed by it, you know?
That's another thing they've been pushing too. When Helena said, I was happy before I was queen, so was Alicent, so was Viserys. So, like, each person was happier before they
Queen
got the
Viserys.
Queen Viserys.
He wishes.
I said it with your pronunciation. The dinosaur Viserys.
So there's definitely, like you said, Sean, they were more than intentional with making this like Aegon's scene of facing the commoners. They even said in the BTS that they were doing it like that on purpose. The same sort of awkwardness. It even includes a thing about sheep and the dragons eating a lot of sheep. This one goes a little farther. It shows the extent, like you said, it shows how this bleeds into other industries. The butcher guy's like, well, what am I supposed to be chopping if there's no meat? And he's like, well, and one of the reasons we're not getting any meat is all the hunters have been drafted, right, as archers. And so some of those guys are probably up at guarding the walls at Rook's Rest. They're probably Criston Cole's garrison at Rook's Rest, a lot of them anyway, and then some of them are in his army. So yeah, that's a good connecting the dots there. And it's worse because when Aegon was faced with this problem, the war hadn't started. It was a problem then, you know, and so it can of course it's worse now. Sylvie wants justice. She brings up the hoarding. And that was a major factor late in season 2. In fact, I've got a connection to make here a little bit later that some of y'all might not have noticed that is a big, big deal. And of course, one connection to be made with Sylvie is she didn't introduce herself as Sylvie, rider of Prince Aemon. Hey, introduce the name of your mount, right? That's how you're supposed to do it, right? So she is outraged, Rhaenyra is, at the hoarding of food, which is... it's presented how naive Rhaenyra's reaction is, because Sylvie immediately responds like, I'm no, babe in the woods, or whatever term she uses to indicate that she's wise in the ways of the world. She's like, I know rich people hoard food. Rhaenyra apparently didn't, but, so she's like, is this true? Yeah, it's true. Of course it's true. That's what when there's shortages, people buy things up, but it's not like, you dummy, you shouldn't have known that. No, this is how she was raised. She was raised in isolation. This is who she is. And that's part of when I give her rag on her for occasionally some bad decisions. It's a lot of it is because of this. You're right. Her heart is pretty much always in the right place. But the realities, a lot of them are lost on her, partly because she was never exposed to them. And maybe she doesn't have time to learn them. We'll see. She
criticizes the nobles for hoarding, but I guarantee you House Targaryen on Dragonstone and there have sizable coffers that are kept for them. So yes. She's just saying, no, it's different for me. You should be on the same level as the common people, is basically what she said there, because she's certainly not doing, walking the walk there. And
expecting them to stand up to other houses with dragons, it's a bit much, right? Like, what were they supposed to do? But we'll come back to that scene when we get there. But there is a rat at the base of the throne, and to kind of mark the end of this scene, which was the particular rat that we see at the open and crawl edition. So this is one of the most important rats. Perhaps it's the most famous rat of the episode. This one was bragging to the other rats afterwards. It's like, yeah, I was the throne. I'm the throne rat.
Yeah, in Westeros history, perhaps.
Yeah. One of the most famous. Let's talk about the conversations with Alice. Let's zoom in on those a little more. We've obviously talked about them quite a bit here and there because they're so important. There's several conversations with Alicent. I think it's 3 or 4. We've discussed some of the kill the boy aspects, right? That's, I think, really important. But there's also where it starts, which is when she comes in angry about the gold. And Alicent has one of the best lines of the episode. If you require me to foresee every duplicitous scheme devised by Larys Strong, I confess I cannot help but fall short. And it's like, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, like, I'm not the most clever person in the room, and they don't even talk to me. Like, and then she says, well, you blame me only for what men have done, which is another point that really drives the point home. And of course, Rhaenyra gets that one. She's like, yeah, I have also been left out of things due to gender. So I agree with you on that. So yeah, that's something they can be like, yeah, well, yeah, I shouldn't call you out for that. That's not good. Now, when Helena asks Rhaenyra, did it make her feel better about Jace to kill Otto? It's a cutting remark, and at first second, Alicent looks up at about her daughter like, what the hell did you just say? But then when Rhaenyra doesn't get mad, she realizes that Rhaenyra took it the right way, like took it the way that Helena meant it, which is she meant it honestly. She wasn't like gloating. She wasn't throwing it in her face. She really wanted to know. She was like sincerely curious.
Question.
Yeah, it was a genuine question.
And Helena was sad about Jace's death.
She was.
You know, and so I think probably Rhaenyra knew that they got along, those two, and could sense that. And
when Alicent realizes this, she turns to look at Rhaenyra like, yeah, well, did you? You know, she kind of gives her a look like, yeah, well, what's your answer here? And Rhaenyra does have a clever response, one that maybe Helena certainly wasn't expecting, and Alicent would maybe have preferred not have been uttered aloud, which was, well, I was going to plan on killing Aegon only, as your mother and I agreed. Which is, Helena looks briefly at her mother like, wait, what?
Helena might have been a little surprised by that, but she might not have been that upset.
No, yeah. She was willing to give up. She already saw her willing to give up Aemon, so yeah, I think anyway, so we later do learn
wasn't exactly a good person. She knows it as well as anyone.
Oh yeah, you're 100% right about that. So yeah, I don't know that she feels too bad about that. It was just still a surprising thing to hear probably, but yeah, I'm not sure that it gave her a lot of grief afterwards. We do learn that Helena's been given access to the Godswood and gets to see her daughter every so often. That's a really important detail, different from the book. Jaehaera is not captured by Rhaenyra in the book, so important that she was captured here. We'll talk about that more later, and not in this episode, though. The second conversation between them is when Alicent apologizes, asks for a proper burial for Otto. It's of all the things Rhaenyra is asked for in the day, it's like, okay, yeah, that one, that's like the easiest thing anyone has asked me for today. And it's a diplomatic request. She says it nice, but also Alicent's being smart here. She's like, I cannot, as right as I was in that previous encounter, Rhaenyra is my lifeline here. Like, I'm a prisoner. If she's gonna turn on me, I'm screwed. I gotta be nice to her. I gotta like have a role here. And so that's when the kill the boy conversation happened. Rhaenyra asks her a question. She's like, but Alicent's the one that kind of fishes it. She brings it up. She says, it's weird being with you talking like this. And that kind of brings them back to friendship. And it was a very clever thing to say, because that's when Rhaenyra asked for advice. And that's what Alicent, I think, was hoping for. She's like, well, this is the one thing I can do. I can be honest with her. I can have a role. I can have some value, which I think she's starting to realize. If she realizes I have no value, that could be very bad for me. And she's probably thinking more about Helena than herself in that moment. But Helena's the one that is more at risk, because Helena's the Targaryen, with a Targaryen, not to be crude about it, but has a Targaryen womb. And that's a problem, potentially.
I'll also say that Alicent, I think, wants to help too. She does know the challenges that Rhaenyra has and does have experience. Also, I was thinking of this, and I mentioned earlier how Rhaenyra is trying to get advice and delegate. We've only seen a short moment of her taking the reins, if you will, and it's hard to do everything perfectly immediately. And however intentional it is, or however much it lasts, she is turning to Alicent as an advisor. She's probably not going to name her to the council, right? But she is still going to her for advice as much as she does any of these other counselors. And I think almost literally, I think each person, we got like 3 scenes with Daemon, 3 scenes with Mysaria, 3 scenes with Alicent. And they even said, this didn't occur to me, but I really loved it. I think it was in a behind the scenes somewhere. They said it's almost like Alicent's almost like her conscience. And she's going to check in, like, how am I doing? You know what I mean? I thought that was a really good allegory.
Right on. Well said. Now, another great point that Alicent makes, and it's another one of the really best lines of the episode, is when Rhaenyra is arguing back about having to change to be a queen or a king, however she sees herself, she says, my father didn't have to become a different person. And Alicent's like, your father lived in a world of his own construction. You and I have never lived there. It lands. Rhaenyra does not have a response for that because it's true. It's a truth she hadn't really considered, but it does land. And if you think about it, it's a little bit something like what you referred to last week, Sean, with regards to how Viserys was opining on how he had never really been tested. Rhaenyra's being tested more right here than Viserys was in his entire reign, pretty much. And so putting that into the mix, it's like, yeah, not only did your father just kind of do his own thing as a king. He was like, given the times, that wasn't the worst thing he could be. But if he was like that now, that wouldn't be good. That would be terrible. You don't want to be like him. And I don't know that we could use him as an example, Rhaenyra. Like, he might have really failed this test that you're facing right now. And she doesn't really have an argument against that.
On many levels, too. Even Alicent is, I feel, giving him too much credit when she says he lives in a world of his own construction. Not that that wasn't true, but this is a man's world. Like, he's the king and people respect him because he's a man. He gets to do and say things that you don't get. You have more to prove. Even if you didn't have to fight the usurper or whatever, you would still be in a tougher spot. Viserys inherited a realm and peace, inherited a council and an army and wealth, all the stuff. He already had it all set up in front of him. And he didn't even really have to do the delegation. Like, there are still issues of like candles and rats and whatever else. Viserys didn't have to think about that. Otto, and even Otto probably didn't, because he had other people underneath him that also took care of it. They're all gone. They've fled or been killed or imprisoned or whatever else. The types of decisions that Viserys was making, or even the ones that were required of him, he could still make mistakes and be frivolous and put off the tough ones without many repercussions. Short terms, anyway.
The long term was pretty bad. Yeah.
Right. Like, just simply not better preparing Rhaenyra to be queen, or the realm for her to be queen. Those were mistakes, and they were mistakes of not taking initiative and not thinking about repercussions, and of having banquets and tournaments instead. And even if Viserys is like, hey, let's throw a tournament, he doesn't know or realize or think about the burden of all that, like what it's going to take to send the messengers and get the canvases and feed the people and stage the horses. Like, he doesn't have to worry about it. Suddenly, Rhaenyra does. Every little minor detail she has to worry about or find someone else to worry about, and she has almost no time. Viserys came into this world constructed for him, and then within that constructed a world for himself, and
played with models, played with other worlds on top of all that. Yeah,
big surprise. He never had to change. What do you?
So, moving on, Alicent suggests that the idea that she could just declare Aegon dead. Now, this was meant sincerely. It's a reasonable idea, although I think she is definitely, as Rhaenyra accuses her of, looking, still trying to find a way to keep him alive. She does use the idea, and I think we'll discuss how it causes problems immediately. In fact, in this next section about the High Septon, it pops up right away as a problem, but it could look even worse in the long term, depending on what else happens. And it could look bad on her own side, because what happens if Mysaria and or Daemon find out that the idea to do that came from Alicent, and they're like, you have been listening. They already think she's listening to Alicent too much. If they find out where that idea came from, and that idea goes badly. And anyway, we got to consider the sources of some of these ideas. If they don't go well, other people could get blamed. No one's going to say, oh, Rhaenyra, Daemon is not going to say, for example, oh, Rhaenyra, that was a bad decision. You shouldn't be queen anymore. But whoever gave her the idea, that person can be blamed. There's always a scapegoat, and Rhaenyra will never be scapegoated by her own inner circle. But other people can be. Alicent is very much at risk of that, given her position. Sure. Good point.
Maybe some people in Inner Circle might get to that point.
Yeah, good point. Helena, the question from Brian Valco, Helena not bringing up her own son. I'm not sure why she would bring that up now, because, and for one thing, Rhaenyra wasn't responsible for that. And I don't think Helena believes Rhaenyra was responsible for that. But I think if they had more conversations, it would come up eventually. But that happened quite a while ago. And I know Helena and Alicent already had conversations about it.
Also, that is an interesting point. I hadn't considered it all, but just thinking about it, Helena may also still be struggling with the death of her son, and that might be part of the genuineness of her question. Like, did that make you feel better about losing your son? Maybe I could kill someone, and I'll feel better about losing my And I say that kind of jokingly, but she really might be searching for how to deal with the grief, or she might have even, without it necessarily meaning for it to cut, she might have the wisdom to realize that if she could kill someone, it wouldn't make her feel better about her son.
I think she knows that very clearly.
Too.
Yeah, I don't think she's thinking that way because, as we've said, that's one thing she has in spades is emotional intelligence. She knows that she would not like she immediately was like, yeah, chickens. I know what I want to do. You know what I mean? And she hates death and killing, especially when it's maybe she hates it with animals more. But I do think you're right. Like that could have been interesting, but I don't think it needed to be brought up. I don't think it's like an oversight that she didn't bring it up.
It's also a good contrast here to this Mazzaria scene where Mazzaria, we know in the back of her head is set on what will make her feel better about the situation.
That's
and it's
true.
not even like
What's
she
her
didn't
end
have
game?
her son killed. Mm-mm. You know, she had her livelihood taken from her and burned down and all of that. Of course, she had her life snatched from her, I suppose. But will that make her feel better? I don't think it will.
No, probably not. Revenge usually doesn't work that way. We'll have to see how that works out. So the High Septon, this is one of the most important scenes, I think, in terms of the ramifications. This man is perhaps the most powerful person she speaks with during the episode, but she seems to have taken his support for granted, just as she does with several other people. I said perhaps. She was surprised at his hesitance. I don't think, Daemon would be offended by that for sure. She was surprised at his hesitance. I don't think she saw it coming, and that was a mistake. She should have had a better sense of who this man was, not personally, but the way the faith are. As I said earlier, to be fair, she did not see this meeting coming. It was just like, oh, the guy's waiting in my throne room. She didn't prepare for it. She would have certainly had a conversation with Mazzaria and maybe others to like prepare a certain way. She would have dressed for the occasion. She becomes kind of Ned Stark here in a way, which is that she thinks that just being more righteous is enough, that being righteous is right, that you don't have to win people over. You just have to be right. And it doesn't matter if they have goals of their own or needs of their own. Being right is all that counts. That she's very much this in that scene, and it really is poorly played. She's not putting herself in his shoes or in the belief or in the shoes of a believer like him or in a person of that high position. She should be looking at him as a politician and maybe an ideologue. And if he's both, that's really dangerous. If he's just a politician, that's dangerous, but she can work with that. But she doesn't approach it like this at all. Like I said, she approaches it like a Ned Stark, very straightforwardly. She sees herself as righteous. She bears the burden of prophecy. So when she brings up, hey, you can anoint me, like, why not? And she's just surprised that he won't do it. And he brings up a good point, though. He's like, yeah, well, I need the body. I anointed the other king. But this is where she just gets kind of flustered. She gets mad. This is missing the point. This is politics. She should say, what do you want? What can I do for the faith to make up for? Like, she needs to frame it that, don't say it crudely like what can I bribe you with to get this done? She needs to say it a certain way. But she's just too like above this. This is the type of compromise I mean. This is what Alicent was talking about. You need to compromise. You need to give up something. What does he want? Find out what he wants, give it to him, and then the faith is on your side. There's no bigger win she could have right now, basically. I mean, she could negotiate on principle instead, or negotiate on benefits rather than on principle, because principle's not going to work here. Like Orwell to Daemon, right? She should have said something like, surely there must be another way for you to find satisfaction. Orwell planned ahead. He had someone ready to give up. He was ready for that. She doesn't have anything ready to give this guy. Instead, she played it like Simon Strong, who admitted when Aemon showed up, I confess, I did not anticipate you. And then she sort of stabbed him with her imperiousness here. And then she just makes another misstep here. She says, she tries to she takes her hands in his and says, makes this, the gods sent me a dragon. And the camera work is really clever here. Just as he's saying the gods sent me a dragon, you focus in on the 7-pointed star and he's just recoils in horror like, my gods don't deal in dragons. That is, he doesn't use the word blasphemy, but that's basically what he's saying. It's offensive what she said. Now, he might be just using this for more leverage, but she's not playing that game. She's not playing that game at all. She expected him to play by the rules of, you do what your queen wants and follow the procedures. But no, this is a politician. He's got things he wants. He give me power. It's a quid pro quo. So this is very poorly played on her part, and it's too bad because when she walks away and he says, "Don't make an enemy of the faith," He's right. Do not make an enemy of the faith. She partly mistrusts him because of their connection to the High Towers. But again, what's better? Pushing him back into the High Tower hands? Like, that's not better. Win him over. And if you can't trust him fully, okay, find a way to deal with that. One more point, Sean. The faith is different in this era than in Night of Seven Kingdoms and Game of Thrones. The difference is that in between now and those two shows, Baelor the Blessed existed. And he moved sort of the heart of faith activity to King's Landing when he built the Great Sept of Baelor, which doesn't yet exist. So anyway, go ahead, Sean. Tell me what you think of this scene.
Lots to unpack. One thing is, think of her perspective. In the past, she was like frustrated, we'll say. I can't think of quite the right word. When she came back after having gone to Dragonstone, to see all this Faith of Seven decor around the castle. She said, like, I don't even recognize this as my home anymore, right? And on some level, I wonder how much she was blaming Alicent or thought the Faith was taking advantage of Alicent, or, you know, how she perceived that. But she definitely didn't like it. Does that make sense? So that's a thing to consider in her approach here. And another thing is that I think part of her naivete is that he is a man of the faith, that she's not thinking of him as not to say it's not a mistake on her part, but she understandably assumed that this guy was honest and believed in the gods. And she even tried to appeal to that angle. I thought she made a great argument when she's like, if the gods didn't will it, how did it happen? How come I'm the queen if your gods didn't will it? That was
a great argument. I agree with you there. That was a good point. Yeah.
But then she derailed it by throwing the dragon thing in. And he gets to not answer the first question by latching on to, oh, we don't like you and your dragons anyway. And now the fact is, if she had left him to answer that question, he would have weaseled out of it most certainly, and eventually, you know, been up frustrated with the dragons in the end. You know, I didn't even consider I hesitate to even say corruption, because he may not be just straight up corrupt, but he still might understand the close ties that, I don't know, he wants and or are necessary between the faith and the throne. And he would be angling for that in some way. Like, even if he's not corrupt and he's being genuine, he kind of knows it will cast doubt on him and the faith if they anoint a new monarch without we just anoint. We can't flip flop. We need to have a reason, you know. Like, so even if he's not angling for her to give him more money, she needs to make some speech proclaiming Aegon's death. She needs to make some speech, some public announcement of her, you know, connection to the faith. You know, the things he needed might not necessarily be corrupt political things, although they very well may be that at least also. But you're right that she wasn't prepared for the if-thens of how this conversation might go.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said at the beginning, part of that is because she wasn't prepared to have the conversation at all. If she had prepared for it, she might have done it differently. But I'm not sure any of her advisors would have given her the right advice necessarily.
Not her official advisors, but Alicent.
Alicent would have, maybe.
The person who would have given the best advice here. Yeah.
That's quite possible, yeah. Now, that is what I made this point earlier. Aegon the Fifth is going to have a lot of these same problems in the future, and that is part of why he tries to bring dragons back, because he thought it would help him. And well, yeah. Now, Rhaenyra lacks political capital. She's aware that she lacks gold, but she isn't necessarily even aware of the concept of political capital. I think she thinks she's the queen, and well, that's all it takes. But she's certainly learning that people aren't just doing what she wants, and so maybe she's being disabused of that notion in that sense. But she also was never taught this. This is another thing that Viserys and her other elders just didn't prepare her for. So hopefully she's smart enough to figure out some of this on her own. Otherwise, yeah, there will be other problems. Now, part of the problem too is that she has this whole destiny sense. Like, Daemon's obviously taking it too far, but she is like a link in the chain of the prophecy here. She's carrying something very important. It's a weight of divine responsibility. So she's not a god, but she's also looking at this man like, okay, who do you think you are? You know, I actually have the fate of the world is partly connected to what I do here. So she's had some of her own Kool-Aid, not as much as Daemon, but she also doesn't know what it means. Like, she doesn't even understand the weight. Like, how could she? Who could understand what the weight of all that prophecy means? She didn't have the vision Daemon had. All she's had is what her father told her, and then confirmation from Daemon, which meant a lot given his position. But anyway, I digress. Let us have a quick break, and we'll come back with a lot more of the rest of the episode. The best place to keep track of us and to keep up with us and to support our show is at our website. There's always a lot of things going on there. It's usually pretty consistent, and we are occasionally adding new things. You can, for example, shop our links on the right-hand side there, and you can sign up through our Patreon links to go to Patreon and become a patron and be a monthly supporter of our show and get bonus episodes and things of that nature, like the aforementioned Red Kraken and Lion, Kraken, and Seahorse episodes. But also, we would love for you to become a World Science Fiction Society member so you can vote for us in this year's Hugo Awards, because we are nominated for the award for Best Related Work. And we are hopeful to become a winner so we can say that in the future, that, hey, we are the Hugo Award-winning History of Westeros podcast. That would be great for us.
We're a Hugo Award-nominated History of Westeros podcast, which is pretty great.
You're right.
I'm not
it's
so
already
unhappy about that. George R. R. Martin is also a Hugo loser, so...
That's
happy
right.
to be a Hugo loser.
We went to Hugo loser parties before we ever lost a Hugo. We'll see. Maybe we won't ever lose a Hugo. Maybe we'll only have one. We'll see. All right, let's get right back to it. We've got so much to talk about. We'll move right back into the content. I love the early line here. Made me laugh in a way that probably wasn't intentional when Rhaenyra refers to her father as, he was strong then. I just couldn't help of thinking of Robert saying, gods, I was strong then.
I thought of that too. I hope it's intentional.
I couldn't help but think of Aemon calling her boys strong.
Oh, yeah, right. He was strong. No, he was Targaryen then, and Targaryen when he died. Linda brings Rhaenyra tea for her cramps at that one council meeting, but she doesn't drink it. She just kind of like flicks it away and is like, ugh. So I thought that was interesting. We talked a little bit about her going to sleep in Daemon's bed. That was neat, like that she finds comfort there, or that she also just doesn't like that bed. It's both those things, I guess. Smart move in theory. Mysaria is ordered to question the household, to look for spies, for those who cleave to the High Towers. We already saw how that was a thing. Mysaria herself had a spy in the Green's household. So yes, that is a thing to worry about. Problem is, as necessary as it is, it also just jams the works up even more when there's so much to get done. It's necessary, but oh boy, it's just another like, things are slowing down. We gotta. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Some of the people that might cleave to the High Towers are also competent and experienced in their positions. And suddenly you kick them out and bring in a new person who's not competent and experienced. You only have some of you have already been kicked out and brought back in. Like it's a tricky endeavor.
Where are you supposed to find all these people, right? A lot of the good people would have run away from King's Landing. Like, yeah, I'm not staying in this city. This is bad. Like Cat, you would move out. There was a blockade here a while ago. There's no food. What are we supposed to do? Like, it doesn't seem like the stable place to live. Yeah, go live in Lannisport. That's a bad idea, actually. The Red Kraken goes and attacks Lannisport. But you might think that was a good place to go. Maybe White Harbor. Yeah, White Harbor. That's where you should go. Go to White Harbor. That's
even with more time and resources, think how tricky it is. Like, it's not binary as cleave to the High Towers or don't, right? Some people will have levels of how loyal they are or would be. And some people might be loyal to, Alicent, but not Otto or not the High Towers in general.
Yeah.
Or on and on. Like, how do you gauge all these people? And you also have to do it kind of secretly, because once you interview 4 or 5 people and one of them gets fired, the next 4 or 5 people are just going to say what they're supposed to say, and you're not going to get the real turncoats. But that's assuming you did have time and resources to go through this process. How is Mysaria going to do she doesn't have a staff to delegate to either. She's just on her own going to go around. How many people do you think are in the household? 7? It's probably closer to 170, if she could do one person a day, all right, 6 months from now, I'll report back to you,
Yeah, it's a lot to do, just like everything else. It's a mountain of work. Okay, let's digress briefly for some fanning out here. Talk about just our favorite scenes / moment as we do every episode. Sean, what was yours?
I have a tough time deciding. A couple have been mentioned already. I really liked the scene. I thought it was really great filmmaking when she was going down the halls and people just kept coming at her with different issues. I really like it showed the types of issues that you have to deal with as a leader that usually aren't portrayed, and how overwhelmed that she feels. And I like the camera work and the audio and the music and all that. It made it feel really frustrating and intense. That was a great scene. I also like the Corlys confrontation with her. In general, I liked it. It would kind of harken back to Vaemon, who got his head cut off for as much. And the music was really perfectly done. It was this sort of like it's kind of like a quiet but busy kind of rhythmic, and those little kind of dissonant sounds. And then suddenly when Cora says was a bastard, and this deep bass came in, it was so well constructed with the music, and it was Rhaenyra's response. But also the one I think I might pick in was the Dragon Rider knighting. I think that one was done so well in so many ways too, with everything being told by that moment, how it's kind of ad hoc. Like, I guess we got to knight these guys. And Ulf, who doesn't really get all the ways to the nobles, like, is that it? I thought there'd be more to this. He's kind of right.
He is kind of right. Yeah.
Ceremony for 3 dragon riders.
They're still taking apart the room behind them. It's it's really it's like the opposite of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms moment where.
And it was also.
Yeah, Lionel's like, this is so important. And then Daemon's like,
had this sort of gravitas to it. And it also showed that Rhaenyra is not going to really acknowledge Corlys's bastards. She didn't say Adam of Driftmark. She said Adam of Hull. And she laughed. She scoffed. It was part of why I like this scene, because it also included some humor, which a lot of the others didn't. The episode didn't have much of it. But how are you going to fashion yourself, Ulf? He's like, oh, Targaryen. She's like, oh, absolutely not.
So just to jump in real quick, he wouldn't be Adam of Driftmark. It would be Adam Velaryon. That's what the name would have been had he been legitimized.
If he'd been legitimized, but he could still fashion himself in some way.
But that was the point.
Didn't give him any option.
That was the point of him saying that. Yeah. So Driftmark or Hull would have been the same thing.
Yeah. She let Ulf. Well, she kind of let Ulf choose. He didn't get what he wanted, and he was disgruntled again. And she let Hugh choose, but she didn't let Adam even choose. So, that scene did a lot of work, had a little humor in it, was well written, well performed. I love it.
Shaya, what's your choice?
The exact same, too. My favorite was Corlys's bastard proclamation, as I said at the beginning, and the dragon seeds being knighted, not only, as I mentioned before, because Ulf is genuinely very hilarious, and, why wouldn't you think, I'm a member of your family, of course I'm gonna go. They have him go first, they don't give him any clue as to what your style means. He's like, well, I'm a Targaryen.
Look at
obviously.
That face.
He's just it doesn't there's no manipulation there. He just genuinely is like, obviously I picked Targaryen, and they're just so shocked, and it's so funny, and he gets scolded, and just the way he moves his hair aside a little bit when Daemon is knighting him.
He's a little worried about being cut. Yeah, that was hilarious.
But also the great sadness that you see on Adam's face here, which is he's really very stoic throughout it, and he's like, and then he just kind of looks crushed.
He does, yeah, and they did not, no one seemed to notice, except for hopefully the audience, but you're right, stoic.
Maybe also his other fellow dragon seeds might also notice. They all kind of have some dissatisfaction that they've spoken about. I don't know. They've had lots of conversations, just the 3 of them, and Hugh's obviously not, is still concerned about getting his lot and a home for Kat. But I agree with you, Sean. Even if she wasn't going to legitimize Adam, let him choose his style. He's not just of Hull. Let him choose a the. So, yeah, I was even more, aggrieved by Rhaenyra's decision to name him and not let him declare a name. And I don't know.
She wasn't forthright about it. If she was gonna, she wasn't forthright about it. If she was going to do it, she shouldn't have waited for the ceremony to kind of back down.
Yeah, just punch him in the gut in front of everyone. Do that privately and tell him, and just decide in the moment. It was so poorly handled. And I again remain aggrieved as well for Ulf and Hugh, who if you're gonna allot them like a whole dragon, they deserve your respect, and otherwise they're gonna turn on you.
Yeah,
it seems like so crazy to me that she wouldn't be worried about them.
Yeah, even if it's too much to announce Ulf as a Targaryen and too much to announce Adam as a Valyrian, meet with them in private first. Meet with them and say, hey, we're going to do this knighting. I'm going to ask you to style yourself. What are your ideas? You know what I mean? There should have been more to this.
Yes.
But instead, just on the spur of the moment, without anyone given a chance to think about it, and in the first thought they have being immediately shut down, like it was not, it was should have been this thing of raising them up and making them feel proud and commanding the respect of everyone around. But there's not even hardly anyone around to be a witness to this. What should have been epic moment in their life, So
yeah, they were stinted, no doubt. My favorite was Daeron's reveal. I loved the way that a chain of reactions started there. Alicent reacted, and you just know in her head there's a lot of things going on. When she doesn't recognize her son, she's like, what's Rhaenyra going to do now? What's Aemon going to do now? Okay, I thought my son was going to at least be sent to the wall. Now does that mean he's going to die? Like, there's so many things she's thinking, and it's just all in her face. And then Rhaenyra, her reaction is amazing too. Like the back and forth, like she gets what Alicent's face means. She knows Alicent too well, knows that can't be faked. And then Daeron himself, when he's out, he sees what's going on. He realizes, he's like, well, she's not going to know me. I know that the jig is up. That's supposed to be my mother, and she knows I'm not her son. And he like I said earlier, his eye fluttered, like his left eye fluttered twice, which I was like, man, that's a really good acting by that kid there.
This scene reminded me of that scene in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms that we loved so much at the end with Tansel and Egg coming in and revealing himself, and like it cuts from all their reactions like that, whereas like that was the comedic version of that. But I feel like if we put that music to this scene, it would also line up very well.
Maybe we should make that as a reel. That'd be fun.
That.
Music to that.
I also wanted to say another part of why I picked Alicent as the best actress here, and just in general, I didn't name this one, but I did also love this scene. It was so well done because think Alicent at first, her first thoughts are probably like, what's going on here? Am I being tricked? Like she at first probably thinks that this might be some trick on her. So then she goes to wait a minute, this is a trick on Rhaenyra. Wait a minute, what does this trick on Rhaenyra mean? Like, and part of this might even be a little relief because she was afraid this boy, her son, was about to be sent to the wall. There's some piece of her is like, oh, maybe my son won't be sent to the wall. There might be a little relief in her. There might be a little fear for what happens to this kid. He still might get executed. And also her son might get burned alive on his dragon like Aegon. You know what I mean? Like there's, like you said, there's a lot going through her mind. And it's all coming through her facial expressions, and she's scared to say anything because she doesn't know quite what's happening. She doesn't want to embarrass Rhaenyra, right? Even saying this isn't my son. If there is some trick going on that she might get some value from, she loses it. Even if that's not happening, she might embarrass Rhaenyra by reveal. Does that make sense? She needs to just be quiet and let Rhaenyra piece it together. And Rhaenyra does. Oh, it was so good.
The biggest piece of gravity, I think, out of all that, you're totally right. But I think the thing that they both realize in that moment that's bigger than any of those things is this war isn't over. Like, Rhaenyra thought it was over. Like, we knew it wasn't. So maybe that's something that's easier to miss because we all know it's not over. And she knows. Alicent, and it's just clearly not anywhere near over with that realization that Ormond is still doing something like this. This can't just be some little trick. This can't be just, oops, it's just way more coming because this implies so much more is coming. Yeah. And I think the weight of that is landing on them as they're realizing that on top of everything else. Let's talk about Daemon the Conqueror, aka Daemon the Great. The balcony scene. This was one of my other favorites of the episode. Daemon is the most unhinged. He's the most like drunk on power. In some ways it's peak Daemon, and Rhaenyra is sort of being peak Rhaenyra here in that she just doesn't accept that. And even if she did, if she was a god, she would be the sort of god that tries to take care of people, not the one that just conquers everybody. And where he's sort of is starting to seemingly interpret the prophecy as license to conquer, which that's not what the prophecy said. That's not, but I mean, he thinks it's open to interpretation. He talks of conquering all the way to Yee. That's like 4 Westeroses more of territory to get that far. Like, and it's 4 Westeroses that wasn't pre-conquered by dragons. This was just like resettling an existing kingdom. It's not conquering from scratch.
You know what I think of?
It's crazy.
He brings up Dorne before, right? And he brings up Essos here. And he also has brought up seeing a girl in a desert with dragons at her breast. I think he has this idea that maybe there's a reason that we need to extend to Dorne or to the deserts of Essos. And I think it's not totally out of nowhere that he's like talking about these places, because he brought up Dorne last episode.
He brought up the desert and the girl. You're right.
And
that could be
that up. He has to be like, well, why? We don't have deserts in our land. Where is this girl?
That's a very good catch.
Yeah, so that's
really good.
I don't think it's crazy, but I think he's definitely takes it a little far, and
I mean, there are even more deserts past Yee, so like, yeah, maybe. Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting. I think you're right. That had not occurred to me, and I'm going to go ahead and change my mind on the fly here. It doesn't make it unhinged. It doesn't make it not unhinged, but it does make a lot more sense, and it's still very fitting for Daemon too. Power going to his head and leaning into it.
I just don't want it to take away from our assessment of him being drunk with power.
Hey, I think both can be true.
Where he wants to direct it makes some sense with that context.
Like the music, the music gets creepier when he says the line about them being gods. And it's like Rhaenyra's like, what now? And the music turns with it. So she's like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. He gets kind of on this might makes right tangent a bit. Like Valyria was right to do what they did because they were the strongest. Because he's not saying that they had this whole prophecy back then. He's not necessarily referring to that, but he doesn't need justification. He just thinks, yeah, we're the best. It's our responsibility to do that. The prophecy makes us the justified in almost anything we do to make this happen, because otherwise the world ends. And
including go kill a little boy.
Yeah, including go kill a little boy, right? To kill the boy. And that's of course how the scene ends, when he gets frustrated with her lack of grand ambition. He's like, you still have to kill Daeron. He's just walking away. It's kind of petty.
It's not a representation of like the realisticness of Rhaenyra, if you will, and the living in his own world, man's world, whatever, of Daemon. Like, Rhaenyra's like, look, we got to get this city settled first. You're talking about conquering the world. We can't even get candles for the castle. You know what I mean? Like, she's being more realistic about what's needed to actually run a kingdom. He's just thinking about what's needed to go conquer a kingdom.
He's thinking
out with his dragons and his sword. And just like what happened with Daeron, without the proper follow through, it's not going to work.
Yep. He's thinking, give someone else the task of making all this stuff work. You just leave it to a subordinate, let alone, never mind that who's qualified to do that. But hey, that's part of why he thinks it should be given to somebody else, because it's not his job. It shouldn't be her job. I love that he mentioned the city of the winged men. That is just so far away. That is literally the edge of the map that we have. George has not gone farther than the city of winged men. Well, here's our Michael Klarfeld map to show you where it lies. Can
I tell you something really funny about this, actually? It's so far off the map that some may know that my bedspread is Michael Klarfeld's map of the known worlds, and my sheet is Essos, but it's this exact map is my bedspread. Well, we went to look last night or the night before for where that city was on my bed. It's cut off. It's not quite, it didn't make it on my bedspread, so it's literally off the map.
That's why Rhaenyra needs a new bed. Even her also doesn't have the City of the Winged Men on it. She needs that. Let's talk about the rat cook scene. It's not really like A Song of Ice and Fire's rat cook legend. It's just a similar name because rats were cooked. In the A Song of Ice and Fire version, to be clear, the rat cook was a person who violated guest right by serving that person's sons to him in a pie, and the gods turned him into a rat as punishment. It was because of the guest right violation. That was the big crime he committed, even though he was killing an Andal king and killing the children of the Andal king. And obviously it refers to the Manderley thing, the Lord Manderley and the pies thing, somewhat indirectly in A Song of Ice and Fire. So it's kind of neat that there's also a Manderley in the scene, the only recognizable house here. But let's set that all up. and talk about why it's interesting and possibly, curious. So never are the rats more prominent than here. It's sort of a clever solution to having too many rats. Cook them up and serve them. Of course, those weren't real rats being served. Those were, like shaped like rats. Just
prosthetic rats.
Prosthetic rats, right? It was presented as a punishment and as a promise. It's a punishment for the way they treated the poor folk in the city by hoarding food, by not being better stewards of those with less, and a promise of what she expected for them in the future. It's like, if you don't do that, if you don't be better stewards, then you can expect worse than this. I'm not just going to embarrass you and waste your time. I'm going to do something harsher. She calls herself a conciliator, which is invoking the name of her famous forebear, but this is not a very conciliating thing to do. She's coming down pretty hard on a lot of noble families. She's not really giving them anything in exchange either, she wants to bring peace, but she's, like you said, Sean, maybe has the right idea or has the right heart in the right place, but this is not conciliatory.
She even just dismisses them. She's like, they're all minor nobles anyways. They don't matter. Like, she says that.
She says
like,
that,
it doesn't
yes.
really matter.
And what Mushroom is quoted in Fire and Blood is saying, a bunch of rats can bring down a bull or a lion. And in this, you could imagine that he also says dragon in that
I will say,
context.
To the conciliator point, and I'm not exactly trying to claim this was the wisest move, but it seems she may have been justified in chopping these people's heads off. Like, being served rats is better than being accused of treason. I'm sure that's not what they would think or what they're going to come away with from this. But there is a world in which all these people get executed.
Sure, I think so. Yeah, that would be like a Maegor thing to do. But you're right. Like, maybe she wants to be like Maegor. Maybe that's the lesson. Maybe that's the lesson she wants to set for everybody else. So yeah, I didn't see this coming even a little. It was a very surprising scene.
I exclaimed. You remember during it? I went, she's gonna feed them the rats.
You did, right when it was happening, because
like,
it was
right
like
before it came out.
because they were all presented with their dish at the exact same moment. There was something a little suspicious about that. And there's a clue earlier. If you ever rewatch the episode, y'all, she says to Sir Luther, I have a certain notion about certain families that you can identify. And then she's interrupted by Hugh asking about his house, which we'll come back to. But it's a kind of a clever little way to show something she had. That's if you ever go back and you'll see that, the little setup for that.
At the beginning of the meal, she also says, before we have our feast, she like stalls for a minute on that word. Yeah.
There's a really good line, one of the best lines that wasn't said by Alicent, and Rhaenyra has a lot of good ones, but this is maybe my favorite, when that one guy goes as far as, despite the rat in front of him, he compares the commoners to rats. Like, he just digs himself in deeper. Like, that's not the right thing to say to Rhaenyra, champion of the people, to call the people rats, And she says, so you wouldn't fight for scraps if your family was dying? And he's like, no. Like, he's disgusted. It's like, admirable. You would lie genteel in your grave. Like, yeah, sure. If you wouldn't fight for your family, then you're a crappy father, man. Like, come on. This is not an admission of you're a good man. This is an admission that you're not as good as you think. Yeah. Now I have I have one flat out quibble and one curiosity. You said, as you pointed out very aptly, Ashea, that she doesn't think these people are of consequence. And then she encounters a Manderly. That is a person of consequence. Even if he's a lesser Manderly, it's an extremely powerful family, extremely rich family. And he's one of the most richly dressed people here. Now, in the book, Torrhen is the heir to White Harbor. Possibly has changed, but if he's still the heir to White Harbor, then this is a bigger oversight on her part by lumping him in this group of lesser nobles. He is not lesser if that's the case. His garb doesn't look lesser. He's dressed nicer than everybody else there, I think. And so here's my small quibble. Then I'll get to this zinger of a point that I think is really big that this leads to. Okay, so he says, he like congratulates her. He's like, yeah, congratulations on a hand well played. A hand! There's no such thing as card games in Westeros or even in Essos that we know of. A hand that's specifically a phrase that only refers to playing cards. There is no other context for that. I get that they're trying to make it about games, Game of Thrones, but that was just a miss. Small thing, just a nitpick, one line. But yeah, I couldn't help but catch that and be like, nah, that's wrong.
I'll say my take on Torrhen was not that he was part of the feast. Was that he observed everyone else go to the feast, and she leaves the feast, and he's amused by what's happened.
Good point. He was not sitting at the table.
He's not. You don't see him at any point at the table, so I don't think he was there.
That's a very good point. Okay,
but he clearly knew what happened. He clearly has his finger on the pulse and knows that all these people were brought rats.
Okay, well, to continue, because we're getting building up to the big point here. Now, honest as a side point though, a deck of cards, red Targaryen, black Fire, would be pretty sweet, or make it green so you can have these guys, Anyway, but he called her out, and a very important call out, not just because we know it's true, because it's super relevant to this episode. He says they may even forget that it was your blockade that created the scarcity in the first place. So it's a reminder of the type of warfare that she's learning and she's up against. Techniques that she used against the Greens are going to be used against her. Striking at the thing that she cares about the most right now, legitimacy. Now, remember I told you she was discussing the scene before it happened with Luthor Largent, and Hugh comes to interrupt her and is like, hey, what about a house for me? Who lost their child because of the blockade? Hugh and Kat. They lost their kid because... So when he says, they may even forget that Hugh doesn't know. He doesn't know that. I don't think he's put it together yet. And so... either he hasn't necessarily put all that together, and she also says, hey, go send for her at Tumbleton, which is now held by the Hightowers. So what we have there, folks, is a sticky situation. There's a lot of things that are... That's a powder keg right there, don't you think, Sean?
I suppose. The thing is, it's hard. There's a lot in between the blockade and a child starving to death. Every child in King's Landing didn't starve to death. So there are other factors, right? It's hard. It would be a little unfair for Hugh to directly blame Rhaenyra, especially because Rhaenyra also smuggled food in, right? So, and other food could have been gotten there. The Aemon wasn't letting people leave the city. The nobles hoarded. I think it's a little much to stretch for Hugh to hold her responsible. Now, that said, Hugh's wife might still hold her responsible. Hugh might hold her partly responsible, but want to blame other people. But when other things aren't going right for him, that are more directly because of her, he might shift his gears.
I would note, Sean, that their daughter didn't just die of starvation. She was very ill. She she wasn't just like a normal child who died. She was a weak and ill
That's true.
child.
That's a fair point.
But yeah.
Right. But that's not Rhaenyra's fault that their child was sick in the first place. It's just it got worse when the blockade came, and you could blame the blockade on Aemon as much as her, I guess. I don't know, or Aegon or whoever, but yeah.
We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
It's certainly, and it's not one thing where we've been pointing to a couple of different things that could possibly be a problem. Anyway, let's move on to, sorry?
Can I say something about Torrhen Manderley first? One, I just want to, we didn't mention who plays him. This is Dan Fogler, who is a relatively popular actor who was in the Fantastic Beasts movies and Fanboys and a number of things. So it was kind of a interesting find, but also he's one of the only Americans we've had. He is an American. I think that's of note. He also looks in this whole scene like a cat who caught a canary.
He does. He looks
like so small, go smiley. I kind of didn't like his demeanor, but I'm intrigued, and I like him normally, so I'm hoping to like him later. He's in a lot of comedies actually. But I hope to see him be funnier, because here he was just kind of smug and smarmy.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I also had a little thought on that, the way that she either is downplaying or not recognizing the importance of his house, or maybe he wasn't quite lumped in with the others. But
I think Ashay is right about that he wasn't at the table, and he must have caught wind of it. There's a lot of ways he could have caught wind of it, like people's houses were getting invaded. Or maybe, well, that didn't happen until during the scene. He says, as in this, at this very moment, it's happening. But he might have caught wind of that somehow.
Whispers within the castle, it would be hard to keep it secret. Look at how many people have to be involved.
It's one of the richest houses in Westeros.
Rats, you have to cook them, you got to prepare them, you have to invite all these nobles. someone could have caught wind of that for sure. But one way or the other, I think it could still be that however important he is or should or could be, she still might be unaware of it because she wasn't really properly prepared to become the monarch. She probably knows about all the lords and castles in the Crownlands and all the biggest, wealthiest cities.
This one I doubt, Sean.
Some city way in the north.
There's only 5 cities in Westeros, though. Only 5 cities in the entire continent, and that's one of them. So I seriously don't think that's the case. The White Harbor and King's Landing would trade constantly. It's very unlikely she doesn't have at least some familiarity with it. But she may not understand the full weight of their power. That I can believe, that she's not quite clear on just how strong they are, because they are very powerful, and that may not have landed. All right, let's talk about the actual distribution of the food that comes after this. Daemon, of course, is mixed on this because he does like the exercise of power, but doesn't think it will do much. And she agrees with that. She's like, yeah, it's not going to do a lot. Gestures matter, but you're right that it is just that. That's the category it belongs in. It is not a lasting solution. So they're both like, they agree on that much. There's a bit of a note of arrogance there that we kind of discussed. They don't really see these nobles as very dangerous. Individually, they're not, but as a group, they could be. It's also bad to use gold cloaks this way. These are police. You're just telling your police to invade people's houses and do things that are kind of corrupt or could be seen as corrupt. They don't have the vision you have. They don't know these people hoarded food necessarily. They don't know why it's so bad given they see other people do it. Like we talked about how she's kind of singling some people out, but a lot of people are guilty of this. So that corrupts the gold cloaks.
It's still a bad precedent to set.
Yeah. Like how many gold cloaks are honestly just taking the food from the storehouses? Like, are you telling me they're not taking a few extra things here and there? Yeah, it's just, and that's the kind of thing she's not going to think about, but a good leader should be aware of such things, that you're going to send your people that use violence to do things, they're going to use violence to do things, and that innocent people are going to, it's not clean. It was cleverly done, but it's not cleanly done, and there could be some pushback. But the actual moment goes pretty well, the distribution of food. The crowd likes her speech, but it's not like an uproar. This has like the vibe a little bit of like a modern staged photo op where politicians like flipping burgers or serving milkshakes to regular folk, and it looks pretty nice, but everybody knows it's a gesture, even the people who were like in it, and the music does not back the scene in the way that you might think. It tells a different story, which is consistent with this episode. Yeah, there's a little bit of triumph, and it's about maybe the happiest the music gets the whole episode, but it's just not happy. It's just like, this is, something bad's going to happen later still.
I love how Rhaenyra's eyes look in this scene, how red and like
she looks tired.
Dark circle. She looks tired. When the scene starts, it's one of those abrupt edits, from her looking at Daeron's body there, sleeping, to her just like eyes closed. You can tell she's barely been sleeping. Her lips are pale. She looks dehydrated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great shot, that one where she wakes up there.
She looks so weak.
She was up all night deciding to do about Daeron,
But then it does rejuvenate her. It's like, as much as she's like, it's about gestures, this is kind of a gesture for her benefit, almost as much as it is for the common folk. Like she needs to feel the win right here. She needs to feel like she's helping. Yeah, I feel like it rejuvenates her just as much.
Real quick tangent, since you brought it up. What was Daeron carving there? It looked like maybe a bird of some sort.
A bird.
Yeah, I think it was a bird.
They could have chosen anything. What do you think that's symbolic of? Is that supposed to represent something? What do you
I just think it shows that he's a kid.
I think it shows that he's a kid. Well, yes. Like him carving, again, I keep bringing up not at Seven Kingdoms, but the idea that like he liked to fish once, the idea that he liked to carve, like one that humanizes him to her. But on a deeper level, Sean, if you are saying like, well, what is the symbolism of a bird flying free? Flying free, I think, is the general what I would think of
That's
for
pretty
it.
good, yeah.
But
he's very trash.
I do agree that it humanizes me as a hobby. He's just a kid.
Why is he not
He could have been carving a bear,
a dragon. He could have been carving a dragon.
Thing, but why did they choose a bird? The idea of being free, being able to fly free. I think
it's that. But again, a dragon flies free, and he didn't carve that. So I think telling that he's a mundane kid. But no, again, I think the greater point is just it humanizes a child.
What if it was a Trojan horse? Like, and then she'd she'd realize, like, oh, it's the Trojan horse. I shouldn't have known. And then that would she'd figure it out right there. Yeah. Back to the distribution scene just for a minute. You're right, Ashea. It does feel good because, yes, she knows she's not solving everyone's problems, but like, so a lot of people are going to eat when they wouldn't have that night, even though it's not nearly everybody. That still counts for something, right? And as long as she's not thinking this is solving everything, then, you know, there's some value to it for sure. Quick note about this scene. Shay and I have talked about how we've been to this location. At least we thought we've been to this location, but this is not the Church of St. George anymore. This is just the backlots. They made it look like that. So they used to film on location, but they saved some money by just making their own version of it. Which, by the way, this was probably the cheapest episode of the season. I'm guessing it's not likely to be a cheaper one than this. Just scenes and no battling. No one died. No sword was swung in anger.
All those rats, though. All those prosthetic
There were some rats. And there were dragons in the opening scene, but still.
Yeah, there were a few dragons. You're right. Not doing much. They were pretty stationary.
Just that tail bouncing
horses,
around.
By the way.
What's that?
Just horses. That's something
there were
you don't
horses.
think about.
It's
but
true.
Filming horses is a whole ordeal to have horses on set.
I would be curious. I could be wrong. I would be curious if there's we don't usually get like a breakdown per episode, but only the big ones sometimes they tell like, oh, this one cost that much or whatever. But yeah. Anyway. So I think it's a really cool scene in that it shows that even when things seem to be going well, the music is telling you that this is still a lot going on here. That's not great. Let's talk about the succession.
Before we move on, can I
ahead.
say one little thing about this? This relates a little to a point that I was making last week, where I'm kind of back and forth on my take that it was a little staged when they're coming up to this moment, and Mysaria is like, the Septon will deny you. This will be your anointing. Think about the time and effort and planning that went into this whole scenario. They had to like organize the feast so they could send the gold cloaks to get this stuff. Then they have to gather this stuff and get it on their carts and go out there. This whole idea probably came either from Mysaria or from conversations that Mysaria and Rhaenyra had. That whole ride they had out where she had fallen asleep. You think nowhere until just now Mysaria said, well, the Septon will deny you, but this will be... You think she never said that till just now? I think that would have been one of the first things as this plan was formulated that would have gotten said. However, so it feels staged. However, they can't show us that whole process, right? They can't add 20 minutes to this episode just to get that line in. So
it's also supposed to feel staged, right? Like it's supposed to feel staged. It is staged. It's supposed to feel staged. Yeah. That's intentional. But yeah, you're right though. That's a good thing to point to. Let's talk to bastard succession. Some of this relates to things we've talked about, talking about Adam and Alan and Corlys. But there was a moment that I wanted to draw our attention to from much earlier in the episode when she's confused about how to deal with some of the issues regarding the common folk about the hunger. In particular, she asks for Corlys' advice, and he says, I'll defer to the queen. And she just calls him useless. She's just useless. And that's when she's kind of just fingering with her drink that she doesn't end up drinking. And she's very frustrated and crampy.
I had that in my notes even, that I thought it was kind of odd for Corlys to not offer something up there.
Yeah. So they... he pulls him over in the hall. Corlys confronts her in the hall, and it's yet another scene where just stuff is happening in the background where they're taking apart the castle. It's just a constant thing. I think this is the last time we see it, because not long after this scene is when they tell her they're done. So at the beginning of this scene, this is when I told you there's like this weird noise that some of you might want to go listen to. It's a strange sound that really marks like something really bad is going to happen. And it does. This is the kind of the culmination of the style of mistake she's making all episode long. She doesn't like ask, is there some other way I can give you satisfaction? Just like she doesn't do that with the High Septon. Like she doesn't try to find another path forward. She doesn't get what she wants. She just kind of gets upset or just keeps going. Just says, well, you got to swallow that. She doesn't try to make up for it or offer him something else. And as we said before, the fact that she just didn't tell him, just kind of dropped it on him by letting him find out, was very poorly done in terms of diplomacy as well, which makes this blow up worse. Corlys just unloads on her, doesn't he? Just calls her out for hypocrisy, says, say aloud the reason your children deserve what mine do not. He just really lets her have it, and it's like everybody who heard him talking was probably like, yeah, That's about right. I mean, he's right. But the gossip, what's shocking about it isn't the information. Yeah, Luthor Largent heard, the servants heard. The gossip is that these two were yelling, or that he was yelling at her, and that he said these things out loud. But the information was already known. Like all the servants already knew this. That's the part I think that maybe gets lost in the shuffle. It's not this big reveal. It may be cool for a couple people. They didn't know it was that certain. Maybe this clarifies it for them, but it was really well known. I think even Rhaenyra, but I think something that Rhaenyra didn't know was so well known. I don't think Rhaenyra knew that everybody knew this out loud, and this might come to a head because of that in some way.
One thought, we talked about this a little already, but one thought that I had, a lot of times when you're watching a show or a movie or whatever, you can come up with a clever response, but realistically the person in the moment can't. But I feel like when he's like, tell me aloud the reason that your children get X and mine don't, she should have said, because I have a dragon, dude. I'm the queen and I have a dragon, back off.
That's what Ulf would say.
Damon would have had, Damon would have had the wherewithal to come back at him with something like that. This is another moment that I'm torn on. I'm a little frustrated because one thing that I feel like a lot of movies and TV shows do is they kind of set up these characters and these conflicts and they build up to a climax and then boop, you cut and the scene just ends. The husband walks in on the wife cheating with him, or the boss overhears the employee conniving against him, and then the scene just ends. And I want to know what happened next. How did they respond? What did they say? And so this bothered me at first, but then I realized I think I know what happened next. Randy's just walked out. She just walked away. She's not going to behead him like Damon.
Or maybe he walked away. Yeah, either way.
Yeah, right. But there wasn't like some follow-up or some explanation or some conciliatory moment, if you will. I think they just left each other's presence at odds with each other. And they probably, I'm guessing he's not going to like sail off and join the other side, overnight. But he's being chipped away at. His loyalty is being chipped away at, and his sons might go with him, especially if Adam's loyalty is also being chipped away at. This might just be a seed being planted. This might be repairable, but man, this doesn't seem repairable. It doesn't seem like even after this confrontation, she's going to change her mind and be like, you're right, I'll announce it to everyone. I don't think that's what she's going to do.
Maybe if confronted with the reality of losing him is presented to her, then she might relent. But yeah, like her logic seems a little bit sketchy, but you can sort of see where she's coming from, given, how big a deal people take bastardy in Westeros. But he also has such a strong point that like, you can put me under that umbrella pretty easily.
She's I
think you feel. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say she's only got one of these bastard sons left. Once the other ones are gone. So who are you protecting at this point? Just Joffrey. And I don't think it's as big of an issue as she's making it seem. I don't think it undermines it that much.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it will, because I think I can see how like Ormond would make use of it. I think Ormond's going to do anything she does that's even slightly sketchy and maybe try to take advantage of that. But taking advantage of this situation can be done in two different ways. Like if she doesn't relent, then he can try to win them as allies, which is obviously a worse outcome for her than relenting.
In and of itself, I think you're right. And I think generally we're perceiving Corlys is on the right side of things in this moment. But I am trying to see this other side, that this isn't the only issue at play. She has to figure out what to do about the Vale not sending troops. She has to figure out what to do about pirates on the coast. She has to figure out to do what the castle doesn't have enough freaking candles. The granaries are running out. She already has all these issues. And this is just, and she can't have a coronation. She's borderline obsessed with the legitimacy of her reign. So for her, in the midst of everything at this moment, to say, oh, by the way, these bastards are legitimized now. It is, I could see why she wants to at least wait.
But she could have been more concrete, right? She could have said,
right, she could have said, Corlys, I will do this in 3 months, or I will do this as soon as we get the Vale to kneel, or right. she could have handled it better. But I do see why she's hesitant about this thing. And there's even another angle to this, that there is another arguable, especially to Rhaenyra and Rhaenyra supporters, heir to Corlys's name, Baela. The thing is,
she's already rejected it.
Daughter,
she's already rejected it. She's not real. She doesn't come before him anyway. Yeah.
Right. She's rejected it, but I'm not sure how aware Rhaenyra is of that, or how aware the realm is of that. There are people in the realm who support her who might think, oh, so Corlys' granddaughter is going to get driftmarked now that women can inherit power, right? No, Rhaenyra's like, no, just me, not her. Just, because I'm just saying, there's one more layer.
There's Rhaena after Baela too. Like, even if Baela said no, Rhaena didn't say no.
Rhaena is also another right.
But I don't think this is what Rhaenyra is thinking about.
Legitimization, when she's looking for legitimization.
But she's not thinking about this, Sean.
Giving her that space.
You can't tell me that Rhaenyra is thinking about Baela or Rhaena right here, because she's not. I don't think there's any part of her that is thinking about that part of it.
Yeah, especially the way she feels about Baela.
Especially in this moment, she isn't. But what she is thinking about is how to make herself look more legitimate. And whether or not she's going to the Baela Rhaena issue, I'm not sure. She may have before when Corlys first brought it up. That is what she's thinking about. Almost all her decisions, all the minutes of her days are thinking about, how can I legitimize myself? And here's Corlys coming up with a way for her to delegitimize herself, and she just...
Well, I think the point that Ashea is making, and I think I agree with Ashea, that it doesn't delegitimize. I think she's imagining that, and it's not necessarily true. Especially because...
or doesn't as much as
Corlys stands by you!
Especially because the alternative is worse. Especially because the alternative is worse. It's not just that it's not that she doesn't like it; it's that she hasn't considered how bad it could be by saying no.
But it's also like the one, right, Sean. The one person who can legitimize this is Corlys, right? In terms of like he has the oomph to be like, no, this is my son's son, like this is my grandson, and if he steps back, then that's a way bigger sign against the legitimacy of Joffrey than anything.
Yeah.
Wait, no, it's not his son's son. It's his son.
No, that was the story before. He would
that Joffrey, that young Joffrey, is his grandson. That's the story. That's the party line right now. Is Corlys' grandson?
But he's not.
But he's not. And he was very gracious to call him his grandson.
Yes.
He cared for Luke. He named him his heir, but like his patience has worn thin, and I think every person in the audience can see why.
Yeah, because he's not trying to break a law. He's not trying to do something that hasn't been done before, where Rhaenyra is. So that's why he's like, you're doing more for yourself. It's not just that you're not getting my kid what they both deserve. You're giving your kid more. And and that's it also and he doesn't have another kid for it to go to. So he mentions the point about his line ending, which is another part. That's a part of the alternative she's not accounting for either, let alone the idea of his loyalty. Anyway, definitely her legitimacy would be harmed very much by losing him as an ally. Not that this is necessarily going to lead to that, but certainly that would be very bad for her. Let's talk about the Daeron unmasking scene. We talked about the great acting in the scene, but let's talk about some of the ramifications of it. Yeah, she does look at him the night before. She's thinking about the kill the boy thing, and she comes up with another path. She's like, okay, what about the wall? I can send him to the wall. And it's a pretty reasonable solution, but of course it quickly becomes moot. That kid doesn't deserve to be sent to the wall. He's not important enough to cut him off from his family like that. It's a funny moment if you rewatch the scene, not funny, but ironic, when she says, I have your mother. He's probably like, wait, my real mother or Alicent Hightower? Like, and he flinches at that because he know either way it's bad for him, like, or something. Either way, the secret's coming out. Like, either
in the same way that Alicent's first response is like, wait a minute, am I being tricked? His first response might have been the same, like, they already discovered me. My mom is. Yeah. I wasn't thinking of that angle, like the different ways his mind would spin at that initial moment too.
So it's pretty cool. I think this is a great example of something that you just can't do this in a book. Like their reactions, the way that went like that. This is a screen kind of thing. So I hope that book readers enjoyed this scene, because it is the kind of thing that just wouldn't play in a book very well. You can't. There's no prose for that kind of facial reaction.
I like that that Rhaenyra smiles. She has to laugh at how she's been played here. You can see her. There's like a moment where she's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
She can't believe it. Partly because she just she from what I said before, like she thinks she's so much more powerful than him at this point, and just can't fathom what the heck he thinks he's doing. Like, this guy's dumb. What can he possibly? What does this accomplish? Like, you're just delaying the inevitable. So yeah, but I guess eventually she thinks about it a little more, and we quickly find out here that there's a dragon keeper at the gates. He gets the jarring cord too. The final use of the jarring cord, and it's just as she's been told that everything's been gathered for everything's been gathered from the Hightower household, and then she says, "Burn it." So I don't know, this last scene I didn't like as much as some of the other scenes. I thought it felt just a little bit contrived. Maybe it was a victim of the structure of this episode that they had to do it this way rather, with her just hearing this news. But it definitely communicated what it needed to communicate. She reacts negatively. He points out that if you do a direct assault, it'll kill a lot of innocent people, which is like, okay, yeah, she reacts to that the right way. Think, okay, I won't do that. But what am I going to do? And she's, again, back to thinking, what the heck is this guy doing? What the heck is this guy doing?
She brags about her long arms.
She does brag about her long arms. Very long arms. She's going to reach all the way to... I do think about that. Like, what if she just says, like, I'll send my dragons to Old Town? Like, screw Tumbleton. You want to...
Let's get the innocents in Old Town, where there's
just
way
burn the
more.
High Tower only. Just burn the top of it, like, let everybody know. Fly around the whole top of the High Tower a few times. Let them see. Just give them a warning shot. Just, like, abandon the upper floors, and then burn it,
I had a really interesting... Oh, go on. You can go first, Sean.
You're half joking about that, but that is a legitimate course to take. Like, go to Old Town with your dragons.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I meant it semi-seriously.
Minimize damage to innocents, but tell Old Town you better send a raven to Ormond and tell him to withdraw.
Well, Ormond's the Lord, but he would get that news to confirmation that they were doing this to him. Yeah, he would want proof.
They maybe can't order him, but they can send the message. Dragons are here in Old Town now. They want you to stand down. Will you please stand down?
Yeah.
Or not, but
You're right.
You know what I started thinking about after seeing this Dragon Keeper, because Dom brought it up actually, is the idea that the Dragon Keepers are this foreign guild that have been brought and who are on this like closer, more intimate level with the royal family, with the Targaryens, that they like call them their first name, they teach them, they just address them, that they're just like closer to them than the Faith are, or the Maesters even. Like, it seems like they don't bow to them and call them like your grace as much. They treat them differently.
Yeah, they're sort of in their own category, aren't they?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it too much.
They're more monastic.
Yeah, they are, and how like they probably are not well liked because they're always speaking Valyrian.
They're very cliquish. And,
they're probably
closed group. Yeah.
I hadn't thought much about the Dragon Keepers. The show really expanded on them in a really interesting way so far, I've thought.
Yeah. I wonder.
They seem to keep to themselves and keep to their old culture. They're not ingratiating themselves or adjusting their style or their language to the people around them. So yeah, they aren't necessarily disliked, but they're probably not exactly welcomed either.
Yeah, it seems like a reasonable way to look at it. Yeah, I agree with you.
Not welcoming. They're probably not welcoming. It doesn't seem. They did not like the idea of these bastards coming in. They're usually like, anyone ride a dragon? Who do you think we are?
Yeah, you're right. They were
like
very
that.
close-minded about things as well, and old-fashioned.
Yeah. So as those fires burn in the end, the episode ends with Rhaenyra looking into the fires of the burned Hightower stuff. And the echoes of the High Septon's words ring. Dragons don't create, they only destroy. That was one of his lines that is also from A Song of Ice and Fire. Dragons don't plant. Things like that. We've heard that phrase before.
Dragons clearly give birth to other dragons. They have eggs. They create eggs that create more destruction. I don't know what they're struggling to get about this.
So she's looking into that fire, and we're left to consider what choices she really has, what she's thinking, what she assumes her enemies are doing, and as her paranoia seems to be growing, and her problems mount. As she thought she was going to make progress towards a new future, and now she's being pulled back into a war she thought was over. And that might mean making a lot darker choices. She started off with these good intentions, but given she's not where she thinks she's at and her enemies are still in the field, well, Alicent's words then ring out that her heart may have to do things that she would have recoiled from before. A lot of very quotable things in this episode that you can point to at the end that really hit all at once here in this final moment. Another reason this was a very strong episode. Jenny of Coldstone Creamery points out they also create dragon glass. Oh, and they create those dragon roads, dragon steel, Valyrian steel. Yeah, right.
They create fire.
Fire, they create fire, yeah. And that fire can last. You can put Olympic torches. They can burn forever.
Fire preserves, as we all have heard many times.
Everybody's heard that. Yeah. All right, folks, that is our episode. I hope to see many of you on the preview stream for Friday. That is where we will talk some book content, some predictions, some theories, some things I didn't mention here because I didn't want to spoil Sean. It looks like Sean has a last thought or two. He's holding up the finger of more thoughts, and I will defer to see what he has to say.
I did have one other quick thing to say about the Dragon Rider scene, and it's a
Dragon Keeper scene.
The Dragon Riders being
the Dragon
anointed,
Seeds being knighted.
Oh, the knighting scene. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Go ahead.
It's a topic that's come up several times, and I think usually what's prompting it is the idea of Dunk being knighted, and the discussion we've had about exactly what are the words, what is the process of being knighted, and we had a couple instances in the book and show of people getting knighted, but they were different each time. And this is yet another different one, which gives me extra ammunition for how Dunk might have been knighted. It might not have been in some official way, the way one person thought, and another person.
Because Dunk is well aware of all these varieties himself, yes. As well. Right on. Still holding that torch. I appreciate it. All right, the trivia question. The question was, there's only one other episode in all of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and Knight of Seven Kingdoms to use a character in that show's first name in the title. Who is the character and the episode title? It's Rhaenyra the Cruel from last season. So it's also Rhaenyra. And we had to word this question very specifically.
Because there's the episode Baelor, but it's not about Baelor Breakspear or Baelor the Blessed, really. It's about the Sept of Baelor. So I had to be very clear that it's about a character that's in the show. So otherwise, Baelor counts. That's the only other one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of episodes of TV. Only 3 episodes have a first name. There's also the episode Lord Snow, and there's many nicknames, the Mountain and the Viper and the Rogue Prince and so on and so forth. But Rhaenyra gets it twice, the only one. Fascinating to me.
And maybe she'll get another one. We'll see. There's a whole 15 episodes left of the show. Okay, so that is it for us. If you want to stay immersed or get into the book versions of these events, check out our Radio Westeros collab on the Dance of the Dragons and our bonus collab with the Red Kraken and the Lion, the Kraken, and the Seahorse bonus episodes that are connected to the dance. They would be taking place right around now in the narrative where the show is. This stuff would be happening right around then. We also have episodes on the Butcher's Ball and the Winter Wolves. And we'll have future episodes about battles in the Riverlands coming out later this year, thanks to our patrons who voted for such in Topics Moot. Yes, that is another fun benefit of being a History of Westeros patron, is participating in polls that determine future episodes. On behalf of Sean and Ashea, I am Aziz. We will see you next time for more. Until then, I highly suggest you Valar reread us and Valar rewatch us.